Nice to see you as well. I don't usually use a powerful mic that makes me seem like I do this a lot, but Devin said he can hear me, so I'm gonna try it out.
I admire this mic. I think it's very professional, and why not live a little, right? Why not get yourself a decent mic once in a while? We're only here so long.
Yeah, yeah. I should have put on socks. I do have a fear that
Yeah,
if I say the letter T, you might be injured. I should probably get some kind of
waiver
lawyer in. Yeah, waiver would be better. Yeah,
in case my organs are liquefied by the basso profundo vibration waves. Yeah, I won't tell about the socks if you won't. They'll never know.
yeah. If you hear if you hear feet, that's really weird. That seems like something you could be committed for. But I had this thought, like, how many waivers have you signed as a parent? So we were talking beforehand. We both have kids around the same age. I have a 7
Yeah,
and a 10.
yeah. My daughters are 10, 8, and 6. I assigned some waivers for them, often at like trampoline parks
Yeah,
or
trampoline.
similar.
Mhm.
I got a minor injury at trampoline park. It didn't take me long. They were all fine, of course, but I was like, I'll do some jumping myself, and then my back makes a noise, and
Oh, yeah.
then my back's tingling for the next X months. But it's all better now. I healed it all off.
Will you ever trampoline again?
Yeah, I'm ready. Get me
Okay,
in,
okay,
coach.
okay. That's not gonna happen here on this call so far as I know, unless
Well,
you're
the night is young.
How have you been?
This is a mobile app too, after all. I'm pretty good. I got 3 delightful kids. I've got a beautiful, talented wife. I've got a job that I like. I'm here in California. So I'm very grateful for how things are turning out. Um, and the workplace we all shared back in the day has a big part of getting me on this path, and it's fun to see how the different alumni of that era
Yeah.
have like gone on to like really cool things and forged great paths that are just like a really talented group of folks.
Yeah, I agree. I think everything I've been thinking about over the last 6 months since I left series entertainment was really, gratitude for, getting to spend time with folks like you, and then after too, I think it's a luxury to spend time with whomever you spend time with, right?
Yeah, and that was an era when we were all learning a lot about how to make games at that
Oh, yeah.
job, and there were a bunch of lifers there who knew a lot that we learned from. I also learned a lot from folks that were, little earlier, a little newer than them, but had been there longer than me, such as yourself, and also
Mhm.
the whole sort of crop of designers that I came in with. Learned a lot from them. Um, And it was a blessing to be able to spend so much time talking about gameplay and how to make it better, just all day long at Wizards, right? We didn't
Yeah.
talk about estimating tasks or memory load times or um,
Budgets.
logistics of marketing campaigns, right? Somebody was
Any
talking about the building,
anything
but it
that
wasn't
human
us.
resources might care about, right?
Anything production, honestly, might care about, but Barclay eventually segued into that. But most of us were just talking about how to make the game fun, how to make it exciting, compelling, all day, every day. Take little breaks to talk about Yoda and Gandalf playing basketball, get back to cards, and then go home. I mean,
Who
and that
who wins
really
that?
that was debated with much fury for years in the pit, along with is gum food. Um, but
Yeah.
I didn't realize at the time how great it was to be empowered to talk about just the fun stuff and just um, cards of the greatest game ever all day with people who are equally passionate and very knowledgeable about those topics, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and sometimes folks disagreed, had creative friction, and came up with some synthesis that was better than anybody had going in. And sometimes you'd get mad about something, sometimes you wouldn't. And just a golden era in a lot of ways.
Yeah, how did you even get into Magic? My memory is you have, a gaming history that's uniquely yours. How did this happen?
I grew up playing D&D and a little bit of Warhammer, and my dad played miniature war games, and my mom sort of like ran a puzzles and board games area in the school that had a bunch of like sensory fidget toys and other cool things you could sort of explore when you had free periods at the school. Um, and I would go to gaming conventions with my dad, and he'd play historical miniature war games, and I'd play whatever they would let me into. And I was like a pretty young kid, and so I'd be like, "Can I play this game about the Alamo?" And they're like, "I don't know, kid." I'm like, give me a shot. I'm sure I can roll some dice or BattleTech or whatever they would like just run at the convention. They would teach you as you joined. Um, and I won some like little 6-person game or got some door prize or something. And it was like a $5 wooden nickel that I could spend at one of the vendors at the gaming convention. And I took it to the vendor and like, what do you have I can get for $5? This is like what I have to work with. And they're like, why don't you buy 2 booster packs of Magic the Gathering Alpha? And I was like, okay. And I bought them. And either in those packs or soon afterwards, I got like Mox Emerald and Mox Pearl, uh, just like in 1993 off the rack for, $2 a pack, maybe 250. Um, and I fell in love with it instantly, of course. And I didn't have a lot of cards, but I'd like play it at any opportunity, and I'd like bring it to summer camps, teach all the kids there. Um, there was like a French exchange program at my high school, and I brought the cards with me there and taught the kid that I stayed with, who was a similar gaming mindset. Um, and then like 10 years later, I was at a Magic Pro Tour in New York, and I see Bertrand Guillaume on the player list. And I'm like, there's no way that's the kid's name. I haven't talked to him in 10 years. And I find him, and it's the same kid. And independently, we had from playing like Grizzly Bears versus Giant Spider while staying with him, he had like independently gone through the whole process that I had of like winning some qualifiers and playing on the Pro Tour, and like there he was. And it was just like uh, a fun moment of parallelism that we had like shared a super casual moment and then gone completely independent but parallel journeys up to playing at a more competitive level. Uh, and he will probably, well, who knows, but he might not have done that if I hadn't like taught him the game, right? Maybe he still would have learned a month later, right? But that was cool. And then he brought his family to visit. Well, he was in the USA with his family touring. He's going through LA, so he stopped by and stayed with us for a few days. And then I happened to be in Paris for work, and then for touring around, and my wife went too. And so we hung out with him also. And so it's just another example of how the game can bring a lot of folks together and how it just forges a lot of bonds.
Yeah, you've made me wonder if your daughters will follow in the same footsteps. Like they'll have their own competitive axis, but will they follow you? Will they
They're
be
all
competitive? Yeah.
my 3 daughters are all very different from each other.
Hmm.
As far as tabletop gaming goes, the eldest one grew up playing like a lot of board games, being passionate about them, and the middle one will play like party games, but not board games per se.
Hmm.
And then the youngest one also, and the oldest one has fallen a little bit away from board games, but I can still talk her into playing it sometimes. I have contemplated like teaching them Magic, and the oldest one has played some of it, but it's like hard for me now to like play it on a super casual level. And it's like if I teach my 10-year-old Magic, am I gonna be like trying to beat her or like teach her to beat me? Am I trying to like tell her how to like be good at Magic? And it's like harder for me to engage on a just like uh let's just cast some giant spiders and see what happens kind of mode. You know what I mean? Like
You're a hunter. I
I've been
understand.
too far on the murder side to go back to just like levitate some vases and enjoy the going up and down with Magic.
Yeah. I haven't played much, but with the girls I could play and just DM it and not care
Mhm.
who wins. I don't care who wins anyway at this point. But there are different types of personalities that make that was an interesting aspect when I was writing the book. There's this kill board that was probably around, like you and Paul Sotosanti might have liked it.
Oh, I remember
But
reading your essay about this.
yeah, but I don't like competition or like the incentive to like essentially inflate cards and then destroy the cards and and have this weird cycle of like, why don't we just make the game good and not psych ourselves out?
I agree that there's a temptation to get excited by your individual contributions, especially when you are new to the team or new to
Oh
the
yeah.
industry. But that's a toxic impulse to be like, this is my card and I made it and I need this card to
Yeah.
get printed because it's mine. Or I killed this card and the rest of the team didn't, and I'm the one who broke the deck and made the card obviously overpowered and caused it to be deleted or nerfed. And that's on me. It's not on everyone else. It's tempting to do that, but it's like ultimately harmful, and it's just better to say we all made this set and we're all working together to make it good. And hopefully we're all making this game, we're making it good. It's even kind of toxic to be like, I want my set to be powerful or I want your set to stop
Yeah.
being so powerful and stealing all the power for the environment. We should all hug and share.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I do you remember when we met? How did we meet?
Uh, I'll try, but let me just say one more thing before we get too far away from this previous topic. With my eldest daughter, we were on Bainbridge Island, and she was like playing board games sort of like beyond her age. She was like avidly interested, and she had some exposure to Harry Potter, and so we played the Harry Potter TCG that Wizards made. And it's simpler than Magic, but it's not too different. And so we're like summoning surly hounds and boa constrictors and like, casting lessons and stuff or playing lessons. And she was like, "This is pretty cool, but like it's a little simple. I wish there was a version that had like a little more to it than this Harry Potter game." And I was like, "Wow, you really walk into this one. Like we happen to have some, 8th edition starter decks in the same bureau in Bainbridge. Let's play those." Um, and so we played those and it was fun. And then it segued into sort of like a live action role playing slash magic play where I would just like give her 20 spells from the starter deck and say like, "You're a wizard and you have these. You go into a room and there's a tree there that talks and the tree needs some help finding this thing. What do you do with these spells you have?" Right. So we just like use it in some other form
That actually
beyond the
makes
game.
sense.
Um, which I think was ultimately even more fun than playing like magic with her uh at the time. But anyway, I
Hmm.
just want to talk about that before we kind of completely got to the next thing. But how did you and I meet? I mean, I imagine we met at Wizards after I joined because you're already there. Um,
No.
it's not true.
I feel like I sound like God or something with this
Oh,
thing.
no, 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 I remember now. Yes, 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 yes. I remember. Yes. No, you're right. Yes, there was a moment. It was like in Cambridge area.
Yeah.
Um, and you were like a traveling sage, like a guru who had like transcended the earthly plane and were like floating over the earth, dispensing wisdom and soaking in experiences. There's like some sort of organized play, magic tournament in town, and you were like there for it, but also kind of like maybe above it. It wasn't clear, and you were like staying on somebody's couch and making broken decks and just like living off the land. This is what
It's
happened.
close. No, no, it's a good
Okay.
guess. But what happens is I'm supposed to play in a team tournament with Justin Gary and Eric Lauer, and Eric's up in the Northeast somewhere. He's not in Pittsburgh. So I go to pick up Eric to go meet Justin, but Eric's decided he doesn't want to play in the Pro Tour. He's not feeling very good. So I go to Boston anyway, and we're supposed to practice with the Your Move Games guys for a Pro Tour that we no longer have a third for. And I have no place to stay. I've actually never slept in Boston in a bed or a couch. I've
They
been
don't even
there
have them
like
there.
I slept in a Burger King once. I like stayed up all night walking the streets. I what didn't have the confidence. The Boston guys always scared me to death. They were quiet and methodical and never like expressed a friendliness, even though I think they might have been friendly.
Yeah, they were a little bit on the cold side. They
Yeah, so
they had the Boston slowness as far as a methodical approach to gameplay, but that's what people describe them as having.
yeah, I have to imagine some of them were not cold, but I never saw that. And it wasn't always like mean, but it was like
A little
detached
insular,
from,
standoffish.
yeah, Dr. Manhattan style, if you know what I mean.
A delightful comparison.
Yeah. So we did meet. You did show up at Wizards, and I did know. I was like, I know who this is, but no one else knew. Well, like, where did you come from? How did this happen?
um, it's a great example of a lot of good things in life come from a combination of luck and then uh, being prepared to be able to jump on an opportunity when it arises, and then having the initiative to jump on the opportunity when it arises. And I didn't have all these things, but I got pushed into it. Um, my mom knew I was big into magic, and I was finishing up at Harvard in computer science, and I got my master's degree in computer science also, and I had no idea what to do next. I had like no career plan. I had no like job lined up at all. And my mom was like, "Hey, your cousin nannies for Richard Garfield who invented magic. You should like use this to go meet him." And I was like, "Oh, mom, that's like, that's cool, but that'd be so like cringe to go and like just meet him and knock at the door and like fan out. Like I can't do that. It's real embarrassing. Like you don't get it, mom." And she's like, "No, you should go and meet him. Like don't screw this up." And I was like, "Oh yeah, no, you're right. Like it's much more important to like take a shot than to just be embarrassed." And so she hadn't pushed
For
me, I wouldn't
sure.
have done anything. But she did, which I'm grateful for. And so I went to meet him and talked about board games, and he was like super nice, and uh he's basically a saint of board gaming in that he's so wildly talented, but he's also a really nice guy. And he was very welcoming, inclusive. And at the end of me to him about board games, like trying to impress him. He's like, "Why don't you come by and play some board games sometime?" And it was like the summer, and I had like nothing to do. I saved my brother who was working for Microsoft out there, and I was like, "All right." I just like extended my trips. So I could just like play board games with Garfield and his friends once a week, and like try to impress him, try to impress his friends, and eventually like try to get a job at Magic. And I did that a handful of times, and then eventually I went back to the East Coast. Um, and I sort of thought I should like try to like really take a shot and try to get a job at Wizards, but I was like too intimidated. It was like too easy to push it down the road and say I'd do it next week. And I was
Mhm.
like kind of just doing nothing. Um, and then Bueller wrote a latest developments column where he said, many people wonder what it's like to apply to Wizards. Uh, we give them a VaporOps test that sees how good they are at design and developing. Here's the test. Maybe you should try it, dear reader, and see how it goes. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh no, I've ruined everything. I waited too long. 10,000 people are going to take this test and mail in their answers and like say, this is my chance to get a job at Wizards. And all of a sudden, if I apply like today, I'll be competing against 10,000 people literally instead of like two people that would have been applying for it the week before. So it's like, you've ruined it, Devin, you screwed it up. But at least that was the incentive I needed to like make my application. So I took the test and I put together a packet for how I thought I could add value helping them make sets. And I sent it to Garfield and he gave it to Bill Rose. And then they didn't have slots. And so it just sort of like was in limbo for months and months. And then
Mhm.
eventually a slot opened. For whatever reason, Bill Rose uh, had my application and gave me a shot, interviewed me. And then they brought me out for a year gig. And then I parlayed that into 5 years. Um, and eventually became the head developer, inheriting a title that you once held before me, and the rest is history.
Yeah, there aren't many of us.
It's true. It is a short lineage, but a good one. I don't know.
Yeah.
Very, very grateful to all the folks who were that before me and after me, and the whole game's history is standing on the shoulders of giants, starting with St. Garfield, and just
Oh,
like
yeah.
learning from the previous crop of folks about what to do and what not to do. And at the time that you and I were at Wizards, uh, we learned so much about how to make magic even better in our era than it was 3 years before. And
Mhm.
then 3 years after us, they learned so much about how to make it better than what we were doing, right? And there's so many
For sure.
things that I did in my time that were mistakes from a modern perspective that we've now learned. Don't do that. Do this other thing instead. We're making magic set. And there were so many things that you and I learned about how to make magic sets that they didn't know 3 years before us, right? And so it's just a continuous process of handoffs and improvement and building the edifice uh, ever grander. And it's delightful that the game is doing super well now.
Yeah.
Lots of people play it. Uh, just super popular and touching a lot of folks is really heartwarming to see.
Yeah, I will have a temptation to jump around a little, partly because you and I, like, we were on design teams that had really interesting dynamics. So, we're on the Saviors of Kamigawa team together with Brandon Bozzi and Brian Tinsman, and none of us really are excited about Kamigawa at that point, and every time we come up with a mechanic we like, we just save it for later. Do you remember this?
Yes.
I'm sorry to anyone who wanted Saviors. Like, Saviors isn't the worst set. There are at least 5 sets I think that are worse than it, but it's definitely, like, a set where we had things that we could have put in it to make it good.
Yeah.
We denied it. We denied anyone of a lot of fun. It's really weird memory, right?
Um, the phrase that resonates in my memory most about Saviors of Kamigawa design development was, "If we're ever going to do hand size matters, we should do it now." And the reason is that Kamigawa Block had a bunch of mechanics already in it
Oh, yeah.
that would make it a better time than normal to do a hand size matters mechanic, meaning cards like if you have more cards in your hand than your opponent, this spell is better, or this is something equal number of cards in your hand. Uh, but that phrase was a trap, and
Mhm.
just because if you're ever going to do hand size matters, do it now,
You don't have to
doesn't
do it.
mean you should do it. You don't have to do it.
Yeah,
You
for
could just
sure.
never do it. You would be better off never doing hand size matters. And the reason, if it's not obvious why hand size matters is not a good TCG mechanic, as a broad many cards thing, is that it rewards you for not playing your spells. And playing your spells is pretty fun. Playing lands to support playing more spells is pretty fun. And telling players, hey, the wise thing to do in this set is don't play your cards, hold them back so that your hand size matters cards will be better. Is this a foolish thing to incentivize and
Yeah,
was
for sure.
fundamentally not fun. And so we should have caught that at the time. We didn't. I regret that we did not catch it in time. We made a lot of hand size matters cards.
We did better when we saved the mechanics, and the next two sets were better, I think. The next two blocks. But
We learned and grew over time. I mean, I think there was a large crop of folks that entered at the same time or in a rapid succession, right? And
mhm,
you were maybe the first of that new crop, or maybe you could say that you were part of the earlier generation and someone like me was the first of the new crop. Um, but soon after me, folks like uh, Matt Place and Mike Turian and Nate Heiss and Paul Sotosanti, um, no shade to anyone I didn't happen to name just then, but a whole group of talented folks,
mhm,
don't get mad if I didn't say your name, I think you're great, um, came in and then all leveled up over the course of the next several years
mhm.
and got better and better and better, until eventually they knew a lot of stuff. We still didn't know as much as they knew 3 years after we all left because the technology kept building on itself.
Mhm.
Um, but it was fun to see everybody get better over time.
Yeah, the other set I remember working on you with, which isn't a story I've told, I think to this point, but the Guild Pact design team, where it's Elliot and you, me, and Forsyth, and we're having these weird conversations where I think the three of us are pretty happy with the mechanics that we're talking about, but Elliot's kind of unsure, and so that ended up being an interesting dynamic to try to navigate. Otherwise, it was a very good group to work with, but I remember that one as being like a unique political, how do you manage this situation, kind of thing. Do you remember
Yeah,
this at all? Yeah.
I think I more or less do. Ravnica block had a lot of upfront block planning, more
Mhm,
than a lot of blocks previous to it had, right? Mirage, Visions, Weatherlight, they didn't do a lot of block planning before Mirage, as they will freely say. They had a lot of other great things, but they didn't yet have block planning in place. And Ravnica was famously planned as we're gonna have 4 two-color guilds in the first set, and then 3 two-color guilds in the second set, and then 3 two-color guilds in the third set. And Ravnica was very tightly cycled, where every single two-color guild had a guild mage and a guild leader that is a two-color legend with CCDD in its cost, meaning 2 red and 2 white, and then however many other colors mana you need. And they had a Karoo, meaning a land that produces blue and red, and when you play it to bounce the land back to your hand. And it had a Watery Grave shock land, and it had um, a two-color uncommon spell that did something iconic. They usually blew something up like Mortify, right? Just like there are a million like cycles in Ravnica of, um, here's a white card, the red activation cost. Here's a red card, the white activation cost, right? Just like things that every guild must have in Ravnica. And so the implication was Guild Pact and uh, the third one, the Azorius one.
dissension,
I'm
yeah.
sure it has a name, Dissension.
Hmm,
Those other and they all the keywords, all the guilds had a keyword. And so the implication was the other sets will just do the exact same recipe for guilds in the 3 guilds of Guild Pact, 3 guilds of Dissension. And I think Elliot was like a little more questioning of that strategy and was a little more willing to explore and probe, well, how many things are really to continue and how many things could just be in Ravnica and not continue to Guild Pact. And so I think that was like a little bit of a point of controversy of just like, how do we figure this out? Like, how do we know what we should lock into and just say this is Ravnica part 5, 6, 7 for those color pairs and just straight down the middle, just fill in all these slots for the heavily cycled Ravnica, and how much we say, you know what, we don't have to do that. We can do something different. And Magic has sometimes uh, made a mistake by too tightly following its preceding sets, and they sometimes made a mistake by not following the preceding sets enough. So it's not obvious what to do there.
mhm,
Um, Ultimately, the conversation did play out with we are going to follow Ravnica pretty closely. There are a couple things that Guild Pact has. There's like some rare cycles that Ravnica does not have an analogy for, but it's pretty much the debate resolved with Elliot agreeing to say, you know what, I
yeah,
will follow the structure for the first set. And then once those 2 points were in a line, Dissension had to do that same thing, which was fine. But it worked out great, and I definitely see uh, Ravnica as a triumph. Um, uh, you put a lot of yourself into the Ravnica block, and it shows in the quality. I see a lot of your you're working there. And certainly many of the people in the department worked on it also. But especially given the era that it was an especially good block, for the sort of overall scatter plot of site quality of the era.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing to look back on. You're like, why were there ups and downs? And I think that's a good question for you. Like, why do you think Ravnica really worked where Kamigawa was easier to kind of grok at? Time Spiral and Kamigawa both have kind of similar problems, actually, I think. And how do you think designers in the future essentially learned from those sets to improve the recipe? You're there for Lorwyn and what follows. Like, what made Ravnica work and the other two sets suffer a bit?
With Kamigawa, the theory of the case was we can be a little more top down in how we make a magic block. We don't have to be as mechanically structured in terms of uh, Odyssey being about the graveyard very heavily. It has flashback and threshold and a million ways to mill yourself. Um, that structure for Odyssey is very mechanical. Um, and then they sort of built a creative on it that didn't really match it. Uh, and the creative was not the emphasis. The emphasis was it's a graveyard set. Eventually, Magic realized when you make a graveyard set, you should have a graveyard creative theme within Innistrad, and that was like even much more resonant than Odyssey. It was an even better result. But
Mhm.
anyway, with Champions of Kamigawa, there was thought of let's do a top-down flavor-driven set like we sometimes have in the past. Like Mirage is pretty top-down flavor-driven. Arabian Nights is super top-down flavor-driven. Antiquities is very top-down flavor-driven. Ice Age is pretty top-down flavor-driven, right? Ice Age
Mhm.
didn't start with let's take cumulative upkeep and then build a set around it. Um, it started with let's have some awesome
That is not how
Yetis.
any set should start.
Yes, it's kind of maybe I shouldn't pick on cumulative upkeep. Uh,
I think
I
it's after 30 years, it's okay.
Okay, all right. Cumulative upkeep's not the best mechanic in the world, but it's honestly not the worst. Um, I've seen even worse. Anyway, ICD is top down is what I'm trying to get at. Raj is top
Mhm.
down for the most part. Kamigawa was saying, let's get away from the mechanical Odyssey style, onslaught style design and do a top down story and let the story drive the cards. And so they said, okay, what should the story be? Japan World, for want of a better phrase, has been on a list of like cool playing ideas to explore someday. And there's a lot of cool stuff in Japanese mythology that could be evocative and compelling. Okay, let's push Japanese mythology. I was not on the Champions of Kamigawa design or development team. I was a playtester for it. I was there, but I was sort of doing more focus on third party TCGs for Wizards and DD miniatures kind of stuff. Like I was like
Mhm.
Fifth Dawn is the first set that I like joined the development team on the very end. And I wasn't on Champions in a formal way except as a playtester. But anyway, this is still my impression. And then they said, okay, what's cool about Japanese mythology? There's the idea that Shintoism uh, sees a spirit in many objects in the world, and trees have a spirit, and a shrine has a spirit, and a fan has a spirit, and dreams have spirits. Uh, and so they made a story about okay, the spirit world is upset, and there's a reason why it's going to start to make war in the mortal world. And what do you do when the spirit of everything around you is angry at you, and the spirit of your house is trying to kill you or send you a message? What is the message? Why are they angry? Why are they fighting us? How do we fight back? What weapons do mortals have against spirits and do spirits have against mortals? And so these are all like interesting questions. You can imagine
For
a
sure.
novel exploring these, you imagine a TCG exploring these, and kind of like where they started. And they're
Mhm.
also like legendary creatures are super cool. The set Legends had a lot of cards people loved despite being very mechanically weak, right?
Mhm.
Barktooth Warbeard, Gwendolyn de Courcy, Jasmine Boreal are all like very weak cards, even for the power level at the time, but
Oh,
they
yeah.
were beloved. People love the hell out of these like weird legendary creature cards from Legends. Part because the gold border is gorgeous. The idea of different colors of mana coming together is cool. They suggested backstories that were kind of like D&D esque in their flavor text. Many of them were inspired by the D&D characters of the designers of the time, apparently. And so it's
Yep.
like, okay, like what can we do to make legendary creatures especially cool? And how can champions explore that? Having more legendary creatures we ever had before, having uncommon ones, uh, suggesting that many of these characters have awesome backstories and do cool, unique things. a bunch of cards to make it better be a legendary creature than normal. And so that all like kind of made sense as like avenues to explore. And then along the way, there were some missteps. And there were also a couple of like set wide reboots, like at least one, arguably
Oh,
two,
yeah,
where
too.
it just like it wasn't going great. And the powers that be decided this isn't going great. We're gonna like start over. Like reboot the file essentially to zero, shuffle the people working on it a little bit, and just like take another swing because it's not going well and time's running out. And back then we didn't have as much time before release to work on, and so there's like a lot of time pressure all
Mhm.
the time. And the big sets in particular take forever to make and get right. And so if the release is getting close and things aren't working well and people don't have confidence they're gonna land the plane, they would make a honestly gutsy call to say, let's start over, shuffle the folks working on it and take another tack. And so it happened to Kamigawa maybe once, it sounds like you're saying twice. Um,
Yeah,
and
it
it
was it
was
was pretty rough.
challenging.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. I wasn't supposed to shepherd the design. It was still Randy at that point, but the design, I think one thing that that Kamigawa essentially missed on was, like, having a mechanical heart that was exciting.
Yep.
The legend thing ends up being something we added in development because it felt like at least it was something as opposed to just we didn't hit on the spirits being angry aspect where you could have definitely leaned into that more. I don't think the mechanical heart of that fiction ever showed up. Um, I liked the story you were telling, and I think it makes a lot of sense, and I do think it maps to what Brady was hoping for. The design of the set didn't echo that at any point. Like, it's a really interesting one. I Brady and I have talked offline a bit about it, because I don't hate Kamigawa. I think it's actually a really interesting if you were like, "Hey, this is one set and you can just have the best of the 3 sets and have it in one," I would be like, "That's pretty neat." Could you do it better? Sure, but I don't hate it. It played well together, and it played well with Ravnica, and so, but do I wish it was more powerful? Do I wish the design had more mechanical resonance? Like, for sure, and the legends could have been more exciting. There's a lot we could have done. It
I agree with
I
you.
don't I don't hate it though. Yeah.
Triple Champions Draft actually plays pretty well, and at the time, like, was pretty good. If anything, Betrayers and Saviors watered it down a little bit. It plays maybe a little worse overall. I worked at
Yeah.
both of them, so I'm saying this as a slam against myself more than against others. Um, like, as long as we're talking about it, like, Kamigawa, it did maybe in development and not in design, end up with a little bit of spirits versus mortals in that the soul shift mechanic where this random spirit says soul shift 5 when I die, uh raise dead a spirit that costs 5 or less, meaning return it from my graveyard to my hand.
Mhm.
um and you could have your 6 cost spirit die with soul shift 5, bring up back a 5 cost spirit to your hand, cast it, it dies, it has soul shift 4, you bring it back a 4 cost spirit for your hand, you cast it, it dies as soul shift 3, right? So you can sort of chain them down
Mhm.
in a way that could be satisfying when done well. Spirits had these arcane spells that uh, didn't do anything inherently, which isn't great.
Yeah.
But had like splice onto arcane to sort of like build your own spell, and like you cast this arcane spell, then you splice this bolt onto it, and you splice this mill card onto it, then you did 3 things with your card. It didn't end up being great, but at least we tried to do a thing. I don't know if it's weird that who knows. I was in the building. I didn't work on it too much. Um, for a while, it was like
Yeah.
when you play a spirit or arcane card, do a thing was like a keyword, but then it became clear it like was just a sentence and not a keyword. So that became unkeyworded. Uh, the mortals kind of mostly just had Bushido, which is like very workhorsey. It's like Bushido 2 said when this creature blocks or becomes blocked, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. But it's just like not that good of a keyword. It doesn't change your decisions that
Yeah.
much. Um, and then we all kind of like bamboozled ourselves with flip cards where
Yeah, for sure.
we had a mock-up of what would become the Kamigawa flip card, where the mock-up showed a really cool intertwined art of an angel on one side and a demon on the other side. And so the
Yeah.
art's in the center of the card, the text box of the angel is the top, text box of the demon is the bottom. You would like flip it over to turn it from the angel to the demon. And the art looked incredible. And we're all like, this is going to be kick ass. Players are going to love rotating these cards into the cooler form. Um, there's some of them were like mortals turning into spirits, some of them were like the spirit levels up. It was like really cool. And then none of the production arts looked as good as the Angel Demon that we like had mocked up once that sold us on it. And so I think we just got unlucky where someone just like overperformed on making the art for the mock-up and it looked like so great, and then none of the actual shipped cards looked as good at that. Um,
Yeah, and we underpowered things a bit because I think we wanted to reset the power after Mirrodin, which went off the rails.
for sure. Yeah, Mirrodin had a bunch of broken cards in it, partially because the developers were understaffed during that era. Somebody got called over to work on Star Wars, like you and Henry,
Yeah.
that were among the sort of more hardcore power load developers of the time. And there were a lot of like rushed timelines and everything else. And so when Mirrodin ended up having a bunch of banned cards in it, that's part of what provoked the department to say, "Oh, we have to go hire a bunch of developers, and let's make sure we hire some from the Pro Tour." Uh, that led to this sort of like hiring of me and Matt Place and Turian and Nate Heiss and other excellent people that I am not naming, but who are also great. I'm just gonna shut this
Yeah.
window up so I can still hear you.
Oh, no, for sure. Yeah, it's been a common conversation of yeah, it's interesting talking to SCAF, they had committed to all these games as part of a prior incentive, so we were essentially forced to work on these, not in a bad way,
Yeah.
but we had committed to making all these games, and it ended up distracting a lot of attention from Magic. I worked on a lot of non-Magic things in addition to focusing on Magic early in the first couple of years. Harry Potter, Star Wars, the basketball game. There's a bunch of different projects that were taken on because the company was incentivized to take them on given the timing of things. So it ended up being a real pain point for us, and it was, good from like a, "Hey, let's see how far we can stretch" perspective,
Mhm.
but, I do think it hurt Magic multiple times, and it hurt it after I left too, right, with Glee Max and whatnot. It ends up distracting, quite a bit.
I can see where that was a challenge. Like, Pokemon was printed by Wizards in the year 2000, 2001, and like famously sold $1 billion of cards, the public reported, in around that era, right? In a year. I think I
Mhm,
heard that somewhere. I don't know if it's true or not. Certainly not a secret information. And so I think that made Wizards say, hey, these third party TCGs have a chance to blow up. What's percentage chance that Neopets blows up and becomes the next Pokemon? It's not 100, but it's not zero. How much is it worth investing in Neopets to see if we can get another Pokemon? It seems like it's worth a shot. How much is it worth investing in MLB or basketball or D&D miniatures to see if they can blow up? It's worth a shot. And so I kind of admired they were like taking some
mhm,
shots and in some ways taking someone new to the department, like I was at the time, and saying, hey, we're going to train you up on Neopets and Duel Masters and D&D miniatures and help you learn how to be a tabletop collectible game developer before we set you loose on the flagship Magic that can't afford missteps, right? I can
mhm.
sort of see some wisdom there. And I think it was wise, and I did learn a lot from like Mike Donay on DD Miniatures and like Charlie Catino on Duel Masters, and from Elaine on Neopets, Elaine Chase. That helped me be a better developer because I was sort of starting from being a player but not a developer, right? I think
Yeah.
you were a more key asset on Magic, and so pulling you off Magic to go on Star Wars, that might have been a higher cost, right? Than taking the absolute newest person, putting me on
Yeah,
Neopets.
by Kamigawa, you have Matt there, you have Elaine on Kamigawa. It's actually a really good team from an EQ perspective. Um, Henry is on there as well. I think that's the 4, with me, and it's a good team that, like, didn't find confidence fast enough, which is an interesting thing to look back on. How would you have done it? But it was definitely a team that was like, "I don't like this." And I don't think they were wrong to not like it. In general, when people don't like something, I'm like, "You're probably right not to like it." Um, but it was pretty early for all of us, right? We're all learning how we want to make these things, especially after Mirrodin. Yeah.
There's also a strand of As you said, Mirrodin was overpowered, so there's an intentional attempt to have Kamigawa fall back in power level, but it's a pretty awkward juxtaposition to have overpowered Mirrodin and intentionally underpowered Kamigawa next to each other, like players
Yeah,
who are like,
it's
"Hey,
it
what's the new set got?
sucks.
Underpowered stuff? Ooh, that doesn't sound very attractive." So that's gonna be a problem for impressions. And there was also a sort of theory at the time that Mark Rosewater, who's incredibly talented and I think he's spectacular, had been driving a lot of the big sets of the era, and he'd done a lot in a row. And he was also helping with the smaller sets, and so he was like overloaded. Um, and they said, let's give him a break and not make Rosewater do
He didn't work
every
on
big
it
set.
at all.
So
Yeah,
let's let Rosewater skip Kamigawa. He'll work on Mirrodin before it. He led Mirrodin initial design, and then he can lead the one. Well,
Ravnica, right? He did
okay,
Ravnica
great.
too.
So he led the one after it, right? And so
Yeah.
um, but let's keep him off the middle one, both to give him a rest and also just like let Magic be more varied and not always be like the same person's perspective, but like just take differently designers' perspectives and see what happens, right? Just let it be a panoply of different threads making a tapestry, um, and just uh, intentionally try different approaches. Um, and so I think that there are other folks that can make red great magic sets besides Rosewater, but it like probably made it a little more challenging that he was on the bench for that one.
Yeah, I think that was right. I think if we had had another couple of weeks or another month, I think we would have started. We at the end we had a bunch of casting costs that we started reducing, and we're getting more confidence in doing that. The Kamigawa dragons were initially 7 mana, and we were like, no, we're going to start cutting costs in a bunch of places. And I think if we continue to do that, I know Rosewater and I had talked about having Splice just be on instant and sorcery, so it wasn't so parasitic.
Right. Yep.
That would have been something that was like we were even in the last moments of pencils down, like, do we just want to do this? So I think yeah, it's I think the team was very good, and I think we learned a lot from doing that one. But
Uh,
again, I don't hate it.
the
Yeah,
flavor stuff also drove it to be parasitic in a number of ways,
hard. Yeah.
Kamigawa, not just Splice onto Arcane, which is a great point that it probably would have played better just Splice on Instant. You could combine it with neighboring sets that were not Kamigawa more easily.
Hmm.
But Kamigawa was like, here's a lot of creature type spirit matters with Soul Shift and other cards talk about spirits, but the adjacent sets don't have that many spirits. Here's like samurai creature type matters, ogres and rats matters. Not a lot of ogres and rats and samurai and adjacent sets. There are a couple, but there's not that many. Um, Here's shrine matters. There's no shrines in adjacent sets. Um, Here's Zubera matters. Not a lot of Zuberas adjacent sets, right? There's a lot of just like a flavor driven, this specific thing. Sorry, it's my
It's
phone's
all right.
ringing.
Life happens.
Life happens. This is them telling me something meaningless. Yeah, it was a little bit of parasitism, okay. I can see how flavor drives it, and having like a cool, badass, legendary samurai lord is gonna buff all your samurai. That makes sense. You should do that. But should you have 25 cards of parasitic? It's probably too many. Did Kamigawa have 25 or probably had 50 in terms of things
Yeah.
that cared about only things that were in that set? Um, there was also, while we're on the topic, there was a theory at the time that Magic should be a pendulum that swings back and forth, and that sets should contrast each other intentionally in
Hmm.
order to um, be different and new and refreshing. And so before Mirrodin, uh, in the Onslaught block, if I'm not mistaken, the new Mirrodin block was next. And so they said, let's have very few artifacts in Onslaught so that the
Yeah.
players will get hungry for artifacts, and then their thirst will be sated by Mirrodin giving them 400 artifacts. And then after Mirrodin ships, let's make sure Kamigawa has very few artifacts so that we've just given you a million. You're probably over full of artifacts. Let's back off and give you basically none. And by modern design philosophies, that is an error because you want the blocks to talk to each other and interact in cool, fun ways. And you want the new block to say, here's cool new toys for existing decks. Uh, here's new mechanics that can look back to recent sets that are also in the standard environment of the most recent 2 years of Magic cards. Now it's three, and have cool combinations.
Hmm.
And and so back then it was seen as a virtue to not be too similar to the preceding set. Uh, but by modern design understanding, that is a flaw. And if you're leading to an artifact block, you should have some artifacts ahead of it. Um, Another classic example is that Onslaught is a creature type matters block. and the creature types that matter are something like goblins, elves, um, beasts, clerics,
Yeah, yeah.
etc. And the block right before it is Odyssey block, which is like the only Magic block of its era to have no goblins, no elves, um, because they were on this other plane that
Yeah,
had
it's like you
dwarves
don't want them to
and
mesh well on purpose, right?
yeah, and so I think it was part of that like that pendulum, like let's starve them to get them hungry philosophy, where players do like goblins. So let's give no goblins for years. So that when the goblins finally come, they'll be really excited. And I could see how someone gets to a principle like that, but it was destructive in terms of
Oh, yeah.
Odyssey Onslaught, Onslaught Mirrodin, Mirrodin Kamigawa, and then Kamigawa Ravnica. Like all those intersections um, were intentionally segregated and not linked together, and so it led to standard often being like block monsters, where you'd have very parasitic Mirrodin deck of affinity for artifacts and tons of zero cost artifacts, and then if you're lucky, very parasitic uh, spirits matter, Hanakami, Splice, Raise Dead to get the Hanakami back. You know that kind of Kamigawa based deck that had nothing to do with Mirrodin, or you'd have goblins, which is like Goblin War Chief and Siege Commander, tons of Goblin Matters cards, very little interaction in Mirrodin. You know what I mean? So just like
Mhm.
the decks from the block would just talk to each other and fight other decks from other blocks. Um, and that's not nearly as satisfying as players being empowered to creatively identify the elements they like the most from different blocks and intertwining them in cool and empowered ways.
Yeah, that makes sense. No one cared about artifacts in that way, is how I've like, I don't think people were, like, excited by artifacts, especially I think Mirrodin was cool, don't get me wrong, but, like, it had ceased to be it's similar to Hand Size Matters where, sure, in 1996 or 1995, this would have been interesting, but it ceased to be interesting by the aughts. I have a question for you that came up in my chat with Tom Lapille.
Yeah, Flapilli.
I don't know.
I think that's right, but I might be wrong.
I think they're both right is how he approaches it. You
That's a good
can't be
attitude.
wrong. It's a great attitude.
I love that.
He I asked him this question, and I don't know what answer you will give me. If you had to go to a bar in any guild in Ravnica, which bar would you feel most happy that you chose? What's the bar for you, the guild bar for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm gonna assume I'm not gonna get murdered no matter what I choose, because that would affect the
What?
answer.
Nope, there's no murder in this question. There's
Thank God.
no whammies. Yeah,
That's always a
no
top priority for me.
Russian
Okay.
Ravnica.
So, I'm just gonna run through ones I can remember. Boros, sounds pretty rowdy, sounds pretty fun. Uh, a little aggressive, probably get pretty drunk there. Golgari is kinda, like, creepy, but creepy can be kind of fun, right? You can
Mhm.
like a little spooky vibe. Um Demir, mysterious, talking behind your back, to giving you the gossip. I'm sure I've got one. Oh yeah, Selesnya. That sounds very pleasant. They sound
Yeah.
welcoming. They wanna help others. They wanna help each other out. That sounds the most charming to me out of the first four. If I have to go to all 10, that may requires me to remember they all are. Demir, super fun mad scientist. Um, Orzhov is like the church, haunted ghosts. Sounds creepy, gothic. Uh, Gruel, very violent, destructive, burn the place down. And then the final trio are Azorius is like the cops. They're gonna detain you. They're gonna
Sounds like
set
a
a lot of
great
rules.
place to go drink.
Yeah, it sounds a little awkward. I am a rule follower in my life, and I like knowing what the rules are and following them. Maybe to my detriment. And so probably got more Azorius into me than I'd like to admit. Like I kind of want to know follow these 30 rules and you're going to be fine, and everyone else is going to follow the rules too. That's an environment I'm comfortable in. I
Mhm.
like am not I don't need to I don't need to rebel that much.
You can
uh
trust that you're getting a drink that you should actually drink.
yeah, so honestly, I think even though it's not cool to say Zorius, that might be my choice. Maybe Selesnya is my second place, and then the final dissension guilds are probably Simic. You're mutating it to frogmen and stuff. They're gonna give
S
you like an arm that's from a snail.
It sounds like a Harry Potter card or whatnot.
Yeah,
Sounds
yeah.
fun.
Uh, and then I'm sure there's one more gilded there. Is it Rakdos?
Yeah.
That sounds scary to me. You know, a circus where they throw knives at you
Yeah,
and they
Tom was like, I'm
burn people in the crowd.
Rakdos."
Yeah, I think I'm gonna say, Azorius,
Yeah.
even though
I
it's, like,
said,
not a cool answer.
"This may or may not surprise you, but I echoed your choices literally. I'm
Wow,
also interested in those 2 only. I have no
great.
interest in." So I'll see you there.
Yeah, I'll see you there. I'll keep the seat warm for you.
Alright. So you start getting more magical over time. I know you're working on Ravnica a bunch, and then we start working on Time Spiral. It has similar issues to Kamigawa, where, again, the design feels funny. Like, what's your memory of that set and then block after all this time? Because
Yeah,
you had to live with it after I left. You had to make it work with Lorwyn, which it probably did. But
I thought Time Spiral is very ambitious. It had a bold, uh, concept, which is we're gonna take you through the past of Magic, we're gonna take you to an alternate present of Magic, we're gonna take you to the future of Magic. And it's like, that's a provocative statement.
mhm,
What is the future of Magic? How can you show me that? Isn't every set the future of Magic? It's like, no, no, future sight's really gonna show you the future of Magic and things that we would normally do from the future. And it's a cool provocative statement that it evokes curiosity, makes you wanna learn more, right?
it's exciting.
Planar Chaos being an alternate present of Magic, that's also provocative, interesting. What does that mean, alternate present? And the answer was, what if the color pie were different, different colors did different things? That's pretty provocative. Okay, that's interesting. What can you show me about cards breaking the color pie, and what if the color pie were different? Is an interesting question. And then Time Spiral saying it's a love letter to the Magic sets of the past. It says for anyone out there who's had Magic cards they loved in previous sets, there's a bunch of nods to them and echoes of Magic cards in the past with a twist. And if you loved cards in um, Mirage or in Ice Age or in um, Odyssey or an Onslaught, there's nods to those cards that will say, "We see your love for those sets and we share it with you." Um, and nostalgia is a very powerful force in culture, right? Every movie it is like plumbing the depths of nostalgia. And I think it's not a bad thing to do a Magic set that says, "We're gonna honor your knowledge of the past." And in some ways, in the modern era of Magic, every set is Time Spiral
Mhm,
because they almost all have echoes of past mechanics and cards that you loved with a new version. Um, there are a bunch of cycles of so and so's command that are a cycle of instants that say, "Choose 2 of the following 4 options," right? Like Primal Command in Lorwyn says, "Choose 2 of these 4 awesome effects." Cryptic Command says, "Choose 2 of these awesome effects." That is a powerful cycle of Lorwyn that was, uh, very strong and well liked. And since then, Magic has done a bunch of different command cycles, right? They've done
mhm,
four more cycles of those. And people like those too, and they say, "Oh, you got a new cycle of commands for me? Is it choose twos that have 4 cool options? I got to choose 2 of them, but this time there's a twist because they're all themed around a Strixhaven school or a Lorwyn tribe or whatever the theme is of these new ones."
mhm.
Um, I'm interested in these commands. Tell me more about them. I want to learn more. I know the other ones are cool. I bet these are cool too. And you know what? It turns out they are cool and powerful also in the same way. And so that is what Time Spiral was trying to do. And it's sort of misstepped by putting too much of it in the same set and having too many just weird ass things in the same set and too many instances where if you didn't get the reference, you felt excluded and on the
Yeah.
outside and it didn't feel good. And so for players that were newer and weren't there in Mirage to get the Mirage joke, they see a card that is referencing a Mirage trope and they're just like, I don't know what this is, but I know that I don't get it and I feel dumb. And that was an era when we were like, in theory, trying to get more new players. Like we had a lot of enfranchised players, but we were trying to get new ones, and the new ones did not like Time Spiral. And it
Mm-mm.
just had too many mechanics in the same set by trying to do callbacks to old cards with the keywords included. Um, and Future Sight had way too many mechanics in the same Magic set by trying to say what a future. The way to show you the future Magic is to show you 12 keywords that don't exist yet, and I have 12 keys of the same set. And when I say 12, it's really like 17. I mean, it's just tons of stuff.
Yeah, it was tough to make that one, like, it was a challenging block to try and pull off for sure. It just, yeah, this so Kamigawa and Time Spiral both had like high concepts,
Yeah.
but like didn't have great definition of what that would mean in a set. And
Yep.
that ended up plaguing both sets because like with Ravnica, it tapped into the mechanical heart, like quite literally, like you were talking about Guild Pack. We were like, no, we're gonna stay true to this the entire way. And the other two sets had none of that. Like there's a bonus sheet which just adds more noise, and then whatever you want, guys. And then the design didn't have enough definition at the time, which is something I think once you get to Lorwyn and the sets after, it becomes like basically a rule, right? Like you need this level of mechanical definition up front, or the design can't really get through. I would hope.
Yeah,
That's my mental story to myself that I don't know if it's true. You
I
tell
think you
me.
make a good point. I think you're right. I think Time Spiral was a good fit for the people in R&D, but was
Hmm.
not a good enough fit for people that did not have encyclopedic knowledge of 15 years of Magic cards.
If we're only making a cube for us, it's
Right.
fine. Yeah,
And
I
like and
think
like
that's right.
you can do nostalgic stuff in sets and you should, but either do it in bursts like the commands, where people that have never seen a previous command, they're not turned off by a Quandrix command in Strixhaven or a Tristan's command in Lorwyn Eclipse. They're just like, oh, okay, it's a cool cycle, right? They don't need to know the old thing. It's not exclusionary if you don't recognize it. And then also, Magic is like gone back to a ton of planes, especially ones from our era, and done a new set in that plane, right?
Hmm.
And so Kamigawa, people kept asking to go back there, even though it had its own flaws as well as strengths. And eventually, Wizards was like, we figured out how to go back there in a cool way, which is Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. We're going to go back to Kamigawa, have a bunch of nostalgic nods to things you loved in that set, like uh, Eight and a Half Tails and Legendary Dragons. Um, but we're also going to have a bunch of cool new cyberpunk stuff that's going to seem super fresh, right? Or Lorwyn Eclipse, or then we went back to Ravnica, I think multiple times. Went back to Zendikar multiple times.
Hmm.
Um, Going back and saying we're gonna have cool nods to the cards you loved from that set the first time around, and also updated design sensibilities is a good recipe that they've did a number of times, and I see no reason to stop. I mean,
Yeah, Time Spiral was a little bit like, hey, do you like chocolate and peanut butter and celery and raisin? And you just keep adding like these things
yeah,
that in theory taste good together if it's only two things or three
yeah,
things. Um,
too much stuff. I
but
agree.
yeah, yeah, one thing that comes up a lot is like the constructed formats and the limited formats during that window are very good, but it ends up being like the wrong goal. By and large, like that's not what matters. Great that it's good for tournament play, and that it probably set up Lorwyn pretty well too on that front, but it isn't what sells Magic cards or makes the business healthier. So yeah, it was an interesting one. It was Time Spiral was tough for me. I was pretty burnt out at over that development cycle anyway. Like I would say quite burnt out, like dangerously so. And so it was pretty hard for me when it didn't succeed or didn't hit the goals that we had in mind. It took longer than in any other like situation like that to just be like, oh, who cares? But it took a while, just because of how I think fatigued I was personally. But it is interesting. Like some people will be like, I like this now, and some people will be like, I don't like this now, or people are like, oh, we look fondly on that now. The game's more complicated than that. So it's funny. But it was definitely like, ooh, I didn't like that one failed. For
I think
myself.
you uh, shouldered a lot of responsibility,
Yeah.
which can be a burden for the game succeeding at being high quality. And you had a lot of very new people, and the people that were more senior than you had segued into other roles in many cases
Yeah.
where they were working on other products. Um, and so you were kind of like, uh, the person with the responsibility to make the game very good in those couple 3 years when you're the head developer, and you didn't have the old guard around as much anymore, and you had a bunch of young whippersnappers, and I think you felt like, "I have to make this game great, and I have to save these sets, and I
Yeah.
have to do it
That's
by
true.
2 hands because I can't rely on other folks to do it if I fail, like, it's all on me." And so I do think that was like, I can see how that'd be very stressful. I think you did a good job. I think you also trained us up really well and helped us be more successful. Um, but I
Yeah.
can see how that was a lot on you.
Well, yeah, I mean, it definitely impacted how I think about managing people and running teams after that. Just there were things, you can't really do it alone. It's not smart. And figuring out ways to essentially challenge people and give them missions to go off and take on more of the responsibility. I think trying to carry too much is not going to win for anyone in the long run. But yeah, I do think the team was pretty awesome. It's definitely not. I mean, so many people were so good in that orbit who've proven out to be like. I mean, almost everyone's had great careers. Everyone's probably had great careers. I would say, I wouldn't say almost. Everyone's been pretty absolute awesome. Everyone's done amazingly well.
It is
Like
super
you,
fun.
Aaron, Mike, Henry, Matt. I'm doing just fine. I think Nate Heiss has done well too. So it's
Yep.
like
Mike also,
um,
Tom Lipilli also. I mean,
Elaine's done great.
yeah.
I mean, it's just been an awesome group.
I totally agree that from humble beginnings working on Magic cards with like very small titles, basically everyone from the era has had awesome careers,
Yeah.
blossomed, grown to leadership roles in super cool games, helped invent super cool games, games that I've loved. And Wizards honestly has a long history of spinning off talent that goes on to do great things and make the gaming
Hmm.
industry better. There's tons of crossover from Wizards to video games. Almost everyone on the list has gone on to video games
So does Santi too. I
for
didn't name
sure.
you. Sorry,
Yes,
Paul.
Sotosanti is a key figure in
Oh
that
yeah.
group. It's like one of the names I knew I was forgetting. He's very much in the place heist Turian me era, and he's very good and went on to do great things. So I definitely don't mean to omit him. It's
Hmm.
just my
He
brain
didn't
failing.
talk for 6 months. That was in his review, and I know that because I was the first person to get that specific review. So
That's
Paul
funny.
was the second person that was like extremely quiet early on. He
Yeah.
talked. He talks now.
He's very talented.
Yeah, for sure. He is.
But yeah, and the Wizards manner of thinking about game design is very impactful on video game industry as a whole. And people talk about Wizards concepts at other video game companies constantly. Maybe it's because I bring stuff up, but honestly, other people bring it up too before I even get
Oh, for
there.
sure.
Um,
Do you get
and
people telling you the story about things that you did or that you were there for, but they like won't let you tell it, even though you know it so well?
in my
You get that?
life, yes, not necessarily on Wizards. I bombed out on our first meeting, but hit me with an example of one of those.
Oh, no, it comes up a lot. Like they'll be like, Mark Rosewater said it was like this, and so this is how it went down. And I'm like, my dear, I'm sad to tell you this, but I am likely more knowledgeable about this than Mark, even though there's no shade at Mark. It's like pretty sure that decision was in my quarter. So it's funny that comes up for me, but not that often. Like I don't talk to people about magic. I mean, I do talk about it every day, multiple times a day right now.
But
But
besides that,
normally there will be a time where that stops. It doesn't come up that often, but does that come up for you? No.
I see what you mean. Like, for articles that Wizards published, it would sometimes happen where you'd read the article that had just gone live to the world, and it would tell a story, and you're like, "That's not where that card came from." So I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
know what you mean as far as that.
yeah.
It was very bizarre to be like a big Magic fan on the outside as a civilian, and like fanatically consuming the Rosewater Making Magic articles and the Bueller latest development articles, and then eventually being in the building, and then eventually writing them for a year myself.
Mhm.
It's just like a weird change of perspectives to be on the different side of the desk.
It's weird that I never wrote anything. To me, like it's funny looking back. Randy had to write all this stuff, and Randy's I did the Randy call pretty early. He was generous and was like, "I'll volunteer to do this," and I'm like, "All right, let's have fun." But he had to write all these different articles, but I definitely could have written them. It's funny in retrospect. I was pretty shy, like definitely like not front of house style.
I think that's
But
probably the reason. I mean, obviously you could have
yeah,
done it. I think you're definitely a good writer. It was just
yeah, it's funny. And
you were working on your responsibilities, and it felt like a more sort of like put me in the spotlight and watch me dance kind of thing, which you were less interested in.
yeah, I mean, he did it well. Like I think it's funny. I was like, Randy, I can advertise this book at 4 cents per click, like if someone like Rosewater or Kibler or like Randy or Flores, who's in here right now, hi Mike Flores, um,
Hey.
I'm like, hey guys, like someone take this. This is a really low CTR. Normally for a book, it's like 9 cents would be good, 18
Hmm.
cents would be like normal, but 4 cents is like, hey, someone who actually that people know should get out there and do this. So Randy, I was like, hey man, I think you're a good writer. You should do this. And he was like,
I think
my
he's
right,
a good writer.
yeah,
And I
let's get
learned
him
a
to do it.
ton from Bueller's column, reading it on the outside about like how to make a magic card and how to develop
Yeah,
it, and from Rosewater's column. And I think it was like pretty audacious
yeah, they're both good.
that Wizards decided to publish recurring articles about how to make TCGs where the competitors could read them. And the theory of the case was, and Rosewater promoted this and sort of promoted the idea of having a Wizards website that would publish regular articles. So the theory was that the website and articles about how to make Magic and develop it would develop the sophistication of the audience of TCGs and help the audience perceive what a quality TCG set what was and wasn't, and uh, that then they would see, oh, number one, Magic has a lot of thought put into it, and it's worthy of my time. I should play it.
Hmm.
And number two, that the other TCGs out there weren't operating on Magic's level and weren't delivering sets that were as high quality,
Mm.
so they should stick with Magic instead, and that these benefits would outstrip the benefits the competitors would get about getting better at making their own TCGs from reading these articles. You know what I mean? That is like worth it to teach the audience how to be film critics so that they'd appreciate great films, uh, even though you're also telling competitors how to make great films. And I think it also had a very powerful effect, which I've heard a million people echo, where folks periodically will lapse out of playing Magic. Right? It's a game that takes a lot of commitment um, to play for all kinds of reasons. And sometimes your life advances and you're no longer in a place where you can play Magic a million hours a week. And when you lapse, you can keep reading those articles and then 4 years later reactivate and go back to play Magic because something has changed in your life, and you're ready, or your set comes out you're really into, or your friend tells you to play. Um, and keeping the audience like dormant, like a sleeper agent, but ready to reactivate when the time is right through the articles, keeping them alive and keeping them interesting and knowing what's going on is like really powerful and good, and definitely worked on me multiple times and has worked on many people that I've talked to. Like it's a good lifeline for the last players.
So when I was talking to Ben Seck earlier on in this series, we both said that Mark Rosewater should be in some sort of Hall of Fame, and it turns out he isn't one. I didn't know that.
He's very good.
Obviously,
He's
yeah, for
a
sure, yeah.
generational talent. Incredible. Just an incredible designer.
Yeah, I was talking to Henry earlier too, or today, and he was talking about meeting Mark, and Mark was just working at a game store and did like an unbelievable job of anyone who seemed like they would connect with this game. He was a great steward of that. And you feel that over the last 30 plus years that like he has been a great creative person, but also a great front of house. Like
Totally.
a thing that like I still astounds me is like how he would read through every note from the audience every week. Like I could barely stand listening to all of you. Like I have no idea how he could do it. My brain can't tolerate that level of like information, but like holy cow, like that's service oriented person to the max right there. Like it's like
Yeah.
a big lesson to learn, certainly if you're going to make anything creative.
Besides being a spectacular designer, both on a card by card basis and then like at every level beyond that, like cycles, sets, blocks, the lifetime of the game. You know what I mean? Like he's a great planner and like organizer of designs.
Mhm,
Um, and also a great card by card designer, really good charisma, really good writer, really good communicator,
mhm.
a super kind person, generous of spirit, just like uh really, really impressive. Has had a huge beneficial impact on the game. It would not be where it was without him.
Oh, for sure
Um,
not.
it's thrilling he's been there so long.
Yeah. So I want you to tell me what you learned starting to lead sets and development after I'm gone. What are the things you guys learned in the 3 years after I left? What were the evolutions?
Yeah, it's a great question. Let me remind myself what the sets were.
Lorwyn, like
So
we designed. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
so Time Spiral Block was the last one you were there for, is that right?
Yeah, I was at Rosewater's house with I think Soda Santi and Forsyth. Maybe you were there, and we were talking about trying to get the design into shape before I headed out.
The design for Lorwyn?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that uh, Lauren learned some valuable lessons from the magic sets that had gone before, and then there were some lessons that Lauren's release taught us that future magic sets benefited from, right? And that's a continuous chain of things building on each other. Um, Lauren was creature type matters. It was following up on Onslaught, which was creature type matters. And Onslaught had strengths and flaws um, that Lauren was conscious of and trying to build on and go beyond. One of them was that the Onslaught tribes tended to be monocolor and thus were a little bit samey in how you could build them. Goblins and Onslaught mono red, you should play the best goblins. You should play Goblin War Chief and Goblin Sharpshooter and Incinerator and CGN Commander and everything else. And so Lorwyn intentionally had 2 colors for all the tribes and 3 colors for tree folk to give you more diversity in how to build them. So you could play, in theory, blue merfolk or white blue merfolk, or in theory, mono white merfolk, though that last one didn't really happen. And so that was one thing Lorwyn learned. Another thing was that once players in draft in draft and in onslaught block fell in their lanes and said, "I'm a goblin player, I'm an elves player, uh, I'm a beast player," then hi,
My daughter
uh,
says hello.
hello.
That's Devin Lowe. She can't hear
Your
you, but
dad's doing a cool show.
I can hear you. He makes games. Can you believe it?
I have
Hi.
daughters that are your age too.
Yeah. Hi. How are you, cutes? Can I see you in a little bit? We're live. You want to say hi to everyone else too? Nope. She does not. Ah.
It's all good. Uh, and so the changelings in Lorwyn that have every creature type were intentionally there so that the drafters could fight about what they wanted to draft, and the goblin and the elf player next to each other wouldn't just ignore each other's cards because they only care about goblins, they only care about elves. Instead, they might both care about the shapeshifter that's all types, and they have to figure out the right time to draft the shapeshifter before the person next to them drafts it, even though they're in a different tribe. There was also an intentional effort in Lorwyn to bridge across multiple tribes in the same deck in a way that seemed like it paid off. And so there'd be guys that say, "I'm a merfolk, but I benefit merfolk and fairies," or "I'm a goblin, but I also benefit elves for whatever reason." And so in theory, the goblin elf player are both interested in this card, or you could play goblins and elves working together, and that'd be a different gameplay experience than just goblins or just elves. Um, and then another thing was that there's an effort to make sure that the tribes, the types in Lorwyn, had a mechanical identity beyond just what the color pie does for those colors. In Onslaught, what do the goblins do? What is their mechanical identity? They just do the red color pie. They do
Mhm.
bolts, they have haste, they destroy lands, they shatter artifacts. It's just whatever red does, that's what goblins do. And in Lorwyn, that is not the case. And Aaron Forsyth was the lead initial designer of Lorwyn. I ended up being the lead final designer or developer, as they were known at the time. And then Rosewater was sort of coaching Forsyth a bit on uh, his first lead big set design. I think Forsyth might have also led a dissension or some kind of other smaller set earlier.
You did
And talk about
Python? Yeah.
spectacular careers and people who have been a guide in life for the game. Forsyth certainly had an incredible impact on Magic,
Oh, yeah.
grown it beyond all imagination to a huge number of players, and so huge beneficial impact from Forsyth on Magic that cannot be understated. But anyway, the tribes in Lorwyn all do have a specific mechanical identity that is distinct from what the color pie does in their colors. And so, for example, the merfolk that were white blue say things like, "When this merfolk is tapped, get a benefit," or "Tap an untapped merfolk, do something." And so those things together, are a combo. And it makes them feel different than just like random white blue creature deck you might make outside of merfolk. And likewise, all the other tribes in Lorwyn have mechanics like the tree folk saying high toughness is good. We're all 3/5s and 2/7s, and we have words on us saying you want to have a high toughness and a higher toughness than power. That'll be rewarded. And oh, look, all these tree folks are 2/7s, calling back to Iron Root tree folk being a 3/5 and alpha. Um, and so that was another innovation that Lorwyn had ahead of Onslaught. Loren's also the first set that had Planeswalkers. It had 5 of them,
Mhm.
and that's like a pretty big risk to have the first truly new card type in Magic's history in a very long time. And it'd be really easy to screw it up in the rules or the gameplay. And I feel like across the design and development teams for Loren, we basically like crushed on the Planeswalker goal,
Mhm.
and all 5 of them turned out really well. They all like saw some play in constructed, but not too much. You know what I mean? Um, and the character designs were cool, and players resonated with those, and the storytelling was good, and it really worked. And so that
The
was the
art the
highlight of
I
Loren.
like the art a lot too.
Yeah, it's
The
great.
wor the world was really pretty and cute and sweet in a way that I liked a lot.
Oh, you're talking about Loren as a whole, yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
I do think that there was a little bit of a there was a creative plan, which was we're going to do 4 sets in a year, and uh, we don't have the time to build 2 entirely different worlds, and so we're
Mhm.
going to make one world called Lorwyn, and we're going to set it up so that it's nice and cozy and cute and happy on the front end, and then it flips uh, when the Aurora sets in. We're going to flip it to evil, creepy, scheming Shadowmoor. So it's the same people, but they are flipped to be evil instead of cozy. And
Mhm.
so the coziness is really leaned into for the first 2 sets to set up the sort of like, oh, cool, it's a twist of it's going to turn evil in Shadowmoor and Eventide. And that is a good plan. And it's good for like a movie where the first act is like, oh, this town is like really cool and everyone's chill. And then there's like a horror twist and you realize that the town is a dark underside. There's, whatever the twist is. That's good for a movie because you committed to watch the movie and 20 minutes into the movie, the twist happens and you see what the dark side is. But for Magic Set, that ended up being a little bit of a flawed decision in that players had to wait 6 months before the twist dropped and the coziness turned to creepiness and horror. And that's too long for them to live in happy sunshine stealing pies world before the horror hit and became like hardcore and showed you the coziness was intentional setup to horror. And
Mhm.
so I think that the Lauren coziness uh what was flawed in that it was too long to hit the reveal. And it's like kind of funny that there's an intent of like instead of the kill cards in Lorwyn being like eviscerate or blood boil or lava axe doesn't kill a thing, you know what I mean? Lightning
Mhm.
bolt like they are in other sets. In Lorwyn the kill spells were like trip on a wire, steal a pie, throw some brambles at you, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
spoil your milk, like intentionally really non-violent, super cozy things to set up Shadowmoor being like cut your throat, you know what I mean? And again, in the context of the flip, that works, but before the flip, it's problematic. And there was
Yeah.
too much coziness before the intentional flip. And like Bloomborough, I think is a more successful swing at cozy chill storybook fable. Throne of Eldraine, I think, is also a better hit on cozy storybook. It had some dark side in there too. Throne of Eldraine has some like dark side of fairy tales mixed in with the coziness of fairy tales. It has both in the same set, which I think is wiser. And
Mhm.
Bloomburrow is like super cozy, but the tropes are like more familiar, and uh some elements of Lorwyn are beautiful, and some elements of like the card art are like a little bit distorted, and like some of the Kithkin arts of like weird giant heads, and some of them are like aren't welcoming in the way that the Bloomberg art I think is very welcoming and cozy. So anyway, the point is, I appreciate you're being gracious, letting me ramble on so often about this topic. I should let you talk more. But my answer to your question is that we learned some things in Lorwyn that we tried to do better than Onslaught that preceded us, and then subsequent sets learned things that Lorwyn should do better.
Alright. Yeah, I played Lorwyn Eclipse, the recent set.
Hmm.
It was definitely I've played a few of the blocks in the last 20 years, but, it was pretty fun. I think, it was surprising to me how playable everything was. It reminded me of Time Spiral. I don't know if you remember this, but there was a point in Time Spiral where we were like, "Why are we doing these bad cards? Why don't we just make it so that you can have 35 cards to play with and see what happens?" And it ended up being much harder to make your deck in that window, but also, you had much more flexibility, and it felt like it was interesting that the world had proven out that more playables ended up being the right path. It took me like 18 hours to make my deck to play in like dad's night, but once I did, I it was pretty fun.
Yeah, I haven't extensively played every Magic block since then. I go in and out, but I am in
Mhm.
right now, and I played dozens of Lorwyn Eclipse drafts and really enjoyed them. Like, I wasn't gonna miss this
Yeah.
one because I do have memories of Lorwyn, but I've
Mhm.
also played, like, a bunch of, um, other recent sets, including Bloomburrow and including Duskborn, and enjoying those a lot too. And I agree that one of the things, like, even by Lauren, even post Time Spiral, we still were making in Time Spiral and Lauren some intentionally bad creatures where just like the curve and the rate is just so bad.
Mhm.
And that was just a thing you did back then, but we should have questioned it harder and gotten out of it earlier.
Mhm.
And Lauren and even Time Spiral do have some like clunky, like 6 mana 4/1s can't block. Um,
Oh, yeah, I
for no
remember
good
that.
for no good reason, and it was just a thing we were supposed to do at the time, I guess, as like a skill tester, something that like early players could realize was bad, and that would help them level up in their journey. But it wasn't worth the downsides of having sort of like obviously bad cards, and we
Yeah.
eventually stopped doing it. Like by the time we got to like Shards of Lara and then uh Zendikar, and I kind of only just poked my nose into Zendikar a little bit before I left, but there are fewer bad cards once you get out there. But before there, just years and years of you just got to have some really bad cards for whatever reason.
Yeah. I definitely enjoyed when we stopped trying to do that so much.
Yeah,
Uh, those videos were not liked when I shared them. We had to make bad cards with frequency or,
yeah.
we didn't get reviewed on how many bad cards we made or how many good bad cards we made, but, you know, it was, encouraged.
I remember Bill Rose dropping a pearl of wisdom once, which is that even the bad card should have a moment when,
Yeah.
if you drew that specific bad card, it would win you the game, and that moment might not come up very often, but it shouldn't be a card that's like never good in any situation. And so he would say something like, if a card says, enchanter creature has island walk, that is a bad card. Like that's not a card you should typically put in your deck. But there are situations where you want to, if you had enchanted creature against island walk, it would make you win, and without it, you're not going to win,
Mhm.
right? So it's like that. That is um a better example of bad card than 4BB 4/1 can't block
That's really
clash to
bad.
get +1/+1 counter.
It hurts me to even hear that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry for your life, whatever your name
whatever
is.
casting 4BB
You don't
4/1.
you don't even need a name when you call
I
that much.
I is in Lauren in
Oh, boy.
particular, the bad cards were also trying to probe the boundaries of sometimes your deck cares about elves so much you'll take any possible elf and you don't care what it does. And
Mhm.
so it was like the bad cards at least probe the boundary of like, do you have so much elf matters you want to play 5 mana 4/2 must be blocked clash, you got a +1/+1 counter, you know what I mean? Like whatever the bad elf is in that category, we play that elf with this much elf matters? Are you gonna go this far? But even that is not um it's not worth it. And the biggest thing we learned from Lauren uh was there were too many on the board tricks and the board states got too complicated.
Oh, yeah.
Uh it was too hard for the typical player to parse the board once it got too cluttered up. And the main offenders are things like 1U, 1/1 merfolk, tap colon, target creature gets -X -O, where X is the number of merfolk it varies you control. Um, so it's like, I mean, that's a pretty annoying card in general. And then there's also like an uncommon white merfolk ballista that taps to deal X damage to attack and block creature X number of merfolk you control. And then there's also like a tapper. And there's just a bunch of onboard tricks that say tap to do something that will screw up combat math. And it's like brain burny in a bad way to have too many of those on the board. And then also, if you stumble into one and miss one, and you attack your 3/3, and they block their 3/3, and use the shrinker to make your guy shrink and die, and you got no benefit at all, and you shouldn't have done that. You're just net loss, dead weight loss. You're an idiot, and you could have seen it, but you failed to, and you're stupid, and you feel bad. That happened too often because of onboard tricks, and it led to a reckoning post Lorwyn, where we realized, thankfully, within one block, that there's too many onboard tricks, and we shouldn't do that in Magic anymore. And a bunch of Magic truisms that have been true since Alpha of every set needs common Prodigal Sorcerer, every set needs common Samite Healer. Those are true in every block for all of time, right? 15 blocks in a row, however many it was, tons of them. Samite Healers, Prodigal Sorcerers again and again and again. And common tappers, right? W common tap target creature in every single set.
Yeah,
Invasions,
Master
three of them are
Decoy.
common. Yeah, Master Decoy. Invasions, Master Decoy, and two apprentices that also Master Decoy, all common. But anyway, that's too much. You shouldn't do that anymore. Keep those at uncommon or don't do them, and have tricks from the hand that the opponent doesn't have to parse and burn the brains on because in their hand it can't be seen. And if they get hit by it, it's not their fault. They don't feel bad like an idiot because they didn't know it was in their hand, right? And that's just like we did, commit the sin of too many onboard tricks in Lorwyn block. We did solve it by Shards of Lara, which is, quote, New World Order, an
Hmm.
intentional pullback of onboard tricks towards tricks from the hand and
Hmm.
come into play effects. And ever since then, Magic's been on that path. And so, yes, we committed the sin in Lorwyn block of too many onboard tricks, but yes, we learned from it, and Shards of Lara onward did uh, do New World Order fewer onboard tricks. And so that's an example of like, we made some mistakes, we fixed some things in the past, we fixed the old mistakes, made some new ones. Future sets learned from us and made them better. And so the game has just gotten really good over time. It's really great to see them carrying the torch forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. I enjoyed Shards. I played it in like when you were working on it. Like I played in with the playtest cards at some point, and I thought it was pretty fun. It was definitely different than Ravnica in terms of how it felt, but it still felt fun. And obviously, like the triads have been a big flavor add, which is really nice. It was interesting talking to. What's your casting cost?
For me personally,
Yeah.
I guess I'd like to imagine 2WU.
Okay. Yeah, I would have been totally surprised if, like, after the guild bar question, you were like, "I'm Rakdos." It wouldn't make any sense. Like, you
I
had to
pull off the
be.
mask.
Yeah.
I leave that behind you with a serrated knife.
I ask, partly because I was talking to Jeremy Jarvis, and he was like, "I think you would be happy in, like, Esper," and I had to look up what that means.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Those are not my colors." It was funny. I was like, I'm very green."
I thought Ravnica, one of its many strengths is that it takes each two color pair in the block and says we're not just going to do the color pie blue and the color pie black in
Mhm.
Dimir, and that's what Dimir is. Instead, we're going to zoom in on a specific thing that Dimir is going to do, which is spies, infiltration, feeding, milling the opponent in a variety of ways. And the mechanic that lets you like bring things back from your graveyards, you can mill yourself or you can mill them out. Um, and milling the opponent to death in sealed and draft was not common before Ravnica, and it's not common afterwards. But especially in Trivial Ravnica, you could totally do it, and it made them feel unique and like a real new thing that was being done instead of just some blue cards and black cards. And likewise, every other guild built around its keyword mechanic has a unique feel for that guild that's different than other piles of green and black cards, right? Golgari's like dredge and fill my own graveyard and recur things, and you can't ever keep them down. And that's not true of every green and black combo. And then Shards of Lara did a similar thing where the triads, the shards of Lara, uh, that like white, blue, black being Esper was about colored artifacts which hadn't existed before, colored artifact creatures which hadn't existed before, um, and making artifacts matter as far as like colored spells. I guess that's maybe not the best example, but like Exalted and Bant with white, green, blue being about Exalted and making that work made it different than other white, green, blue decks of the past. And one perspective I like to have for Lara, and I tried to like pitch this to creative team, and I think they mostly bought it, but maybe they came up with it independently also. Is so Alara is supposed to be this plane that had all five colors of magic, and it's split apart into shards, and each shard is three colors. And so I try to tell them, and I think they may have come up this throne of not thinking of Bant, the white, green, blue plane shard, of like, what does it mean to be a white, green, and blue place? But instead saying, what does it mean to be a plane completely bereft of black and red mana? What if there was no death and decay and plague and corruption here? There's no black mana. No one's ever heard of it. And
Mhm.
there's no red mana. There's no rage. There's no wild destruction. There's no passion. And so that perspective takes you to um, Bant is a place about chivalry and ceremonial duels where we're not going to kill each other. We're not going to have savagery. We're going to have a tightly controlled, formalized, ritualized combat where no one actually dies. And that gets represented by Exalted. We're going to pick one knight, put him on a horse, trot him forward, all of us cheering for him, and that's the way we have combat: is a single chivalric duel with Exalted guys buffing up the champion for both sides, and we're not going to have like a wild melee of six guys fighting six guys. And so that's like a fun thought exercise for me of like from each of the shards perspective, what does it mean to have a plane that has no blue and white mana or whatever it is, right? Because most Magic sets don't do that.
Yeah. I understand. I appreciate it. My daughter has written up that we have already eaten dinner, and that's okay. Um, she's a sweetheart. Um, yeah, I'm kind of curious what your favorite Magic epoch is in face of that. You've had so many different lives with Magic.
Yeah,
Um, I'm interested in what your answer will be. Based on what you just said.
it's a terrible answer that's gonna get me flamed. But I have a good excuse. Um, I'll say the excuse first. The answer seems less absurd. Everyone's favorite Magic set is the one where they first got good at Magic. I've
Mhm.
heard many people say, and it's true for me. And Mercadian Masks was that set for me. And I played so much like triple Mercadian Masks, and I like got good in a real way that was very exciting to me, and like sort of came into the competitive circuit in a way that I wasn't before.
Mhm.
And that's enough to make it like a golden era in Magic when I like it opened up to me what it meant to like try to be good at Magic and not just like play for funsies. And so obviously it has flaws. I can tell you what they are. You know what they are already. But I do have a soft spot for masks, for mass block constructed, for that era standard. That was the era when I was like winning qualifiers and playing the pro tour, and so it held a special place in my heart.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's cool. I was like thinking, oh, is it just going to be shards? Because it ended up being a really well received set. You were instrumental in it, but I like that you had that answer.
Yeah,
That does make sense. It's not crazy.
I was the lead final designer of Shards, Lorwyn, and Planar Chaos. And
Hmm.
so those are dear to my heart, and I certainly spent a lot of time in them. I also want to give a shout out to Alpha as being just
Yeah.
an incredible cathedral level work of art of set design. And Garfield, besides making Magic itself with the innovations of it is a TCG where there's different components, and it has this mana system and it has this color pie, which are all like incredible genre defining innovations individually, and he put them all in the same game. Uh, he also like went on to make Vampire the Eternal Struggle slash Jihad, which I think is a spectacular game. Netrunner, a spectacular game.
Hmm.
He's done a lot of awesome games since then. He's an incredible systems designer, but then also the content of Alpha that he designed is incredible content. And Alpha sets up so many tropes that every other Magic set since then echoed and did again and again and again with different twists. And like there wouldn't be a giant spider in every Magic set if Garfield didn't put giant spider in Alpha, and there wouldn't be a sea serpent in 17 different Magic sets and still they stopped doing them. Uh, if there wasn't sea serpent in Alpha, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And like white, blue ward and circles of protection and a fire breathing dragon and an evil demon that makes you sacrifice things and eats you if you don't satisfy his dark desires the right way. We're all just like awesome, flavor driven, but really mechanically solid ideas that he made up and we just chase for forever afterwards. But it's a great set.
Yeah, it is a great set. I think a lot of the sets are good. I would say there are only a handful of sets where I'm like, I never want to see that again. Almost every set would be welcome into my heart. And if
What,
we
what,
had to play Masks Block Constructed, I would still be happy.
I love
Not
Alice Block Constructed. What is a Magic set that's near your bottom tier? What's one of the ones you're not that into?
Homelands. I mean,
Yeah,
Homelands, Fallen Empires was also not my favorite. Um, a Prophecy, Saviors. I mean, I think all those were pretty unexciting.
those are good choices. I'm glad you have them all on tap and that you're happy to say them. I think Prophecy. does stand out for me 'cause, like, it was in that era, right? It's in the mass block, but
Mhm.
it had many problems. Um, Homelands, many problems. Chronicles was, like, a super downer when it came out and reprinted a bunch of
Cold
cards and made them
Snap
less
I didn't
special.
like very much.
Yep,
Yeah.
makes sense. I certainly worked on Cold Snap.
Sorry. I didn't say that
No, no,
intentionally.
no, it's fine. I was hoping you would say someone else that worked on it. Cold Snap, I'm sure you've heard other people tell the story, but we basically designed it all in, like, 2 days at Rosewater's house on, like, a
Yeah.
weekend. Partially because the powers that be had said, "We might need a 4th Magic set this year."
Yeah.
And then we were like, "Okay, we don't really want to, but here's what we would do if you made us do it." And they're like, "Okay, fine, you don't have to." And then 6 months later, they came back, they're like, "No, we actually really need a 4th set, and it has to be in production, like, in a week
Yeah. Yeah.
or in a month." And so we designed it all in 2 days, and then the developers had, like, 3 weeks, and then we shipped it. And so just, like, a crazily short amount of time for a Magic set.
And we were underwater on Time Spiral. I guess you were the crossover because you were on both sets, right? I would
Yeah,
assume.
I was on
Yeah.
both, and Forsyth was on both also,
Mhm.
and, maybe Rosewater also.
I
But
remember
anyway,
Zv
Cold Snap was
Z
very
was
rushed.
I thought Zv was on that one, but
Yeah, Zvi has also gone on to a spectacular career. He's always been a
yeah.
genius.
Mhm.
Um, really, his newsletter is super impressive, and he's just like one of the smartest people you can find.
Yeah, I asked him, like, "Do you do all this yourself?" I was like, "Wait a minute, he's got, like, a team of 30 or something that's running all this stuff that" I had not been on the internet prior, in any open way. So I was when I get onto Substack, I'm like, I see Zvi writing 7 long form posts every day, and I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute, this isn't possible." And
What
he's
did he
like,
say?
"I do it all myself."
There you go.
Uh, yeah, and I'm like, "He seems tired to me." But he's
He
fighting the good fight, yeah.
Yeah, he's got a family too, and he's always been like a prolific Magic writer and an insightful
Mhm.
Magic writer, um, and is talented in a broad array of domains.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, when I saw Zvi quoted in the New York Times, I was like, he's really outdone himself this time.
Yeah, he showed up in the Nate Silver book I was listening to, like, a year or 2
Yeah,
ago. I was like,
it's
"What are
like
you doing here? This is
he's like
cool."
legit influential on a global stage.
Yeah. Well, what's on your bucket list at this point?
Um, in terms of like game design, I feel very blessed to have gone to work on my dream game like a million times.
Mhm.
And a lot of people tell game designers, "Hey, don't think you're gonna like get in the industry and get to like make your dream game. You're probably gonna have to like put in your hours making whatever game the company's making for your the 7 games you'll make in your career, right? You'll make a driving game, that's what your studio's making." And
Mhm.
so getting to work on Magic was like a dream, and getting to make the Marvel Superhero Squad online,
Yeah.
CCG, that was all printed paper that I, like, made the whole game and I made all the cards for it, was also a dream. Getting to make the Marvel Legendary, deck building game,
That's been amazing, right?
uh, has been a dream, and people have, responded to it, have, like, 30 or 40 sets out over 13 years, and the DC Legendary, I made that, is coming out soon, the 2nd edition Marvel's coming out soon. I guess it sounds like I'm plugging,
You can
but
plug. It's actually totally welcome.
but the point is that, like, and then Plants vs. Zombies Heroes, a digital TCG for PopCap, I got to make that too, and then lead its sets. And so I feel like I've gotten to make my dream game way more times than I have any right to, right? And now I'm working on
Mhm.
Riftbound for Riot, and that has been delightful too, and a great team, and Riot really knows what they're doing, and the players
Yeah,
really responded to that.
Tom Lapille loves that game. He was someone today I was like, "Hey, I want to have you on."
Yeah,
And I was like, "I'm going to, start figuring out what I wanna do for real after this, after these recording sessions," and he said, "Become a professional Riftbound player." So it's, like, in the zeitgeist right now. People are the real gamers are really enjoying it.
yeah, Lapilli has always been a very talented card player as well as designer. He's like had his career go really well, and he's like a director on various games in his career.
Mhm.
Now he's like grinding Ripbound and flying to tournaments, and it's fun to see him sort of like dust off his
Oh, yeah.
spurs, get back in the saddle, and go go hustle like the old days.
But what's on your bucket list, or have you done it? Was that it? You're like, "Man,
Um,
I don't want
so
me to flex,
yeah,
but
I
my
I would like
career
to. I
too
love
good."
tabletop
It
game
is.
design, and now we get to do it full time again. For a while, I was making video games that weren't tabletop game adjacent per se.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm back to making tabletop games at my Riot job, which is
Mhm.
delightful. And uh, I do have a dream a fantasy of like retiring from video game development someday and just making board games full time.
Hmm.
And I love making board games and tabletop stuff. TCGs are great, board games are great. I love playing board games. It's like the thing I like to do the most. Um, and so part of me is like, is there a number? Is there like a number of dollars I could have where I feel comfortable just like calling it on
Yeah.
my day job work and just being like, I'm just gonna make board games without financial pressure. And if they sell, they sell. If they don't, they don't. I'm gonna make what I want to make and then try to get them
I
published.
think there should be a number.
Some people have a number and they're like, I'm
Yeah.
going to retire when I hit this number. I don't
Yeah.
have one, but I have thought about picking a number.
Hmm.
Um, and part of me is also like, maybe I'll just work till I'm 67 and then whatever number I have then, I'll just stop then. But I can still make board games and I should have like enough acuity remaining to make some board games that hit 67. And it's sort of like a little weird to seem like I'm deferring a dream for another 20-ish years. Uh, it's like, oh, you got to delay make board games for 20 years. Why don't you just do it now? But it's like also I am doing it now because I'm making 4 legendary sets a year
Yeah. Yeah.
on top of the day job
You're
stuff.
busy.
And so like I am making board games right now. Um, and I don't want to hop off this horse while the players still want what I'm making and while I still have ideas that I want to get out there. Uh,
Awesome.
but if this one turns off, I'll make more board games someday. If this river runs dry. Uh, or if I hit some number, if I hit 67, if any of those conditions comes true, I'll try to make more board games. That's what I want to do. What about you?
Oh, yeah. It's a good question. I think I'm in a position where I either will go, as Tom said, work on a cathedral and try to go back to working on something that is a bit of an art to make, or I will consider trying to build the kind of business that I want to see, where it's a bit more lifestyle friendly. I think I've been in Silicon Valley style startups for the last 15 years. And one, I don't like what that leads to in terms of the kinds of products that are getting made and are frankly not very good or interesting or good for people. And so I wonder a bit if there's a different style of smaller company that could do some really interesting things to, especially with the tools coming online, to be more of a community first oriented business. That's something that's on my mind, but either of those two things I think make sense. Bucket list wise, there's another book I think I will write, and you'll start seeing more Zynga people. And so I did have fun writing the Alternate Worlds book. I think the Zynga book I would kind of want to co-author with anyone who wants to be a part of it, which I think is going to be a large cohort. Essentially, like the lessons we took from it, good and bad. And then I'll probably write another book that's um, more do no harm and whimsical than like cutting. I just don't find that very helpful. The whole world can be cutting.
It's
But
pretty good at that.
yeah, I'm like, hey, it's not all that bad. Sometimes it's good, and there are enjoyable learning lessons along the way. Um, I don't know. Maybe I'm an optimist now. I don't know that I was when I was at Wizards, but I certainly sound like one.
I've definitely enjoyed reading alternate worlds through the sort of serialized
Mhm.
Dickensian method of publishing the essays one at a time. I know the book probably has more to it than the ones you released through that vector. But I've enjoyed writing it, and I think that there is some whimsy detectable there, and I think that you can look back on it with less pressure than you felt at the time. Um,
Oh yeah.
with the world on your shoulders and appreciate some of the silly things that happened and the wacky characters of which there were quite a lot, both in the building of R&D and in the player community, all kinds of just really wild characters. Um, More than I feel like most subcultures have for whatever reason. Uh,
Yeah, it's things have changed, like, culturally, that culture probably does not exist anymore. I would like, not in that same way of, you kind of people seem responsible at work now. It's not exactly what I mean, but I don't know. You tell me. I've not worked at a company that was quite so, uh it was
Wacky.
yeah, wacky, yeah. That was a very wacky company that I would guess continue to grow up, but have you ever seen that wacky level again?
No, and
Mhm.
part of the reason is that I've mostly been at video game companies since then, although sometimes I've convinced them to do tabletop style TCGs as video games. Often I've been able to convince them to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
But uh, the video games have so much time at the office spent on how will we make this video game, and what color should the button be, and what are all the features we need in this release, etc. Right? There's all kinds of things you need to make a video game besides the gameplay. And
Yeah.
yes, you also need awesome gameplay, and that's important. And designers should spend a lot of time thinking about awesome gameplay, but they don't get to spend all their time thinking about awesome gameplay. There's so many other things you have to do in a video game besides just that. Um, and at Wizards, as we opened, we just got to spend all of our time talking about how to make the game better. And being in the same room all the time was good for that. And like getting
Mhm.
pulled into conversations of sets you weren't on, and opining about what things should be changed, listening and leveling up from hearing more experienced folks have conversations about what should change was all super helpful, and doesn't always occur in the era of like hybrid work and Zoom meetings, right? Like that era, it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle and get everyone in the same room again, um, at video game companies in 2026.
Yeah. I mean, digital in particular is really different, right? You have fewer designers who are all essentially, like, on your computers a lot of the time, and when you're not, you're playing on a computer, or a digital device. There's something unique and special about analog. It also seems differently competitive in the analog sphere, whereas digital is, you know, I think, it's so easy to compete where I think, tabletop isn't I mean, the supply chain can only support a certain amount of products, and, so I think it's a that dynamic changes what it's like to work in that space. But that's cool. I didn't know you were working on Riftbound, and I think it's awesome that you are because I hear a lot of really great things.
Yeah, I mean, uh, every TCG learns lessons from all the TCGs that have come before, and they bequeath lessons to the ones that come afterwards. We talked about that with regards to Magic itself, but the industry as a whole, all the TCGs are responding to each other's flaws,
Oh,
looking
yeah.
for ways to improve on the downsides of that experience and make them better, looking for new areas they can explore with its own design that are as yet untapped. Um, and I think Riftbound does a lot of cool, different things other TCGs don't do. It's really fun that players have responded to it, and that it's popular, and that some of the messages we're trying to send out through the gameplay are getting out there.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I've talked to Tinsman, I've talked to Brian David Marshall, and it's, uh been cool to see how each of you has taken on the market and, Brian's interested in you can play out of the pack.
Right.
Brian David Marshall.
Yeah.
Tinsman is interested in an exciting game that builds to a seventh turn that ends, and it's like a very different type of experience. And it sounds like Riftbound evolves on Marvel's Snap, and it kind of, I was thinking this type of conversation makes you think, "Oh, Richard was there first," to me, where he's like, got the Star Wars design, and it just over the last 25 years, it's evolved, and become much better, with different smart brains, like, thinking about how to iterate and, evolve beyond that, but, like, he's touched the roots of a lot of the space, by nature of who he is and how he's operated, and that was a neat insight, like, and you maybe that's something you take for granted. Um, but it was eye-opening for me. It's not like they're direct relevant relatives, but at the same time, you can see like a lineage there.
Yeah, one of the great things about Garfield is that the early TCGs that came out besides Magic would either try to clone Magic or be sort of like pretty rough on the gameplay, or
Mhm,
both. And with Vites, Vampire the Eternal Struggle slash Jihad, that Garfield made pretty early. It's so different from Magic, but it's still so compelling. And the way it's built around multiplayer, and you have to attack the person you left and defend against the person you right, was like super innovative and cool. The way Netrunner is like very asymmetrical, and one player is the runner, one player is the corp, and they have very different gameplay patterns, and they're always fighting each other. Super
mhm,
innovative and cool. I do think that in 2026, and a couple years previous, there is like a nice renaissance in TCGs where there's a lot of cool titles
oh,
coming
yeah,
out, a lot of cool innovations, and they are getting traction. And there are more popular TCGs. There's a larger quantity of popular TCGs right now than there have been for a long time,
mhm,
and they have sufficiently large engaged communities to keep them running. Um, and so for a long time, it was Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, as the ones that persisted, and other ones would occasionally try to come out and largely fail. And now, One Piece is doing it is got a community that's working for them, and Flesh and Blood is a community that's working for
Oh
them,
yeah.
and the Gundam TCG is things working for them, and Tinsman has one of the first,
Lorcana's
and
out there. Yeah.
yeah, Lorcana is doing a thing. It's got a community. It's got some cool designers on it. Um, Brian David Marshall has got the Cataclysm game that's new, uh, and just more TCGs than you would think are uh, thriving, working, persisting, building communities. Riftbound, um, Magic's had his best year of all time by a lot. Like last year's Magic's best year of all time, and then this year they're like 80% growth or something. It's really absurd. The Magic growth is in a good way,
Hmm.
super high. Um, and it's great to see so many games out there and just giving players a lot of great choices. Like Commander, Elder Dragon Highlander was young to non-existent when we were there at Wizards, and
Hmm.
now it's so big that it is like eaten all of Magic. Like most Magic is Commander these days, and they have tons of Commander centered products that are intentionally for that audience. And people just love playing Commander, and they love hunting down cards from all areas of Magic and all these sets we worked on, all the sets
That seems
before us
great.
and after us. They love finding weird, cool cards to put in their decks about cats or making clones or whatever the cool deck is about. And just the social vibes, the hanging out. It's not the way I historically play Magic. It's not what draws me to it, but it sure is what draws a lot of Magic players to it. And the fact that Wizards has recognized this and
It's what
embraced
drew
it
me
is
to it.
great. Okay.
It's definitely what drew me to Magic. I wasn't competitive. This actually is like if I was playing Commander would be a really good fit if I could ever go back to not being like a hunter like you. It's really like there is some sea change that happens where like you just can't go back once you like figure out how like winning can work. But like if I had never reached that point, Commander would have definitely been what I did playing Magic. It seems like exactly right for who I was and who the people I played games with back in, 1994.
It certainly seems like a more healthy, um, fun way to hang out with your friends than being a murderer who
Right.
is looking for the 0.1% edge of their win rate. Um, and so like when I imagine millions of Magic players and they're mostly playing Commander and laughing and showing off their cool stuff, that does sound much healthier than a million people trying to defeat each other and being really upset if they don't win?
Yeah. Do you play test at the same speed for Riftbound that you did for Magic the Gathering?
I remember that you did not like that I played slowly when we were
Oh, I
playtesting.
think you're a Bostonian. It's understood.
The boss's slowness, I think, is part of it. That is the
Mhm.
crucible in which I was raised. And the folks out there are more deliberate in their play in a way that the Turians of CMU are not.
Oh, that's
Um,
good. Oh yeah.
the boss people are slow and Turians fast. What I'm
Yeah,
trying
I
to say.
know. No, I know, I know.
Okay. Uh,
You don't have to
I
change. You didn't have to change,
I
but
I
I'm
wanted
curious.
to impress you and do a good job and not make mistakes. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that was important to me, and that made me play slower. Nowadays, I play faster because I don't need to impress anybody,
Yeah.
and getting more reps is more valuable to me than being precise. I do
Yeah.
think it's good that Wizards at the time, and also the other TCG plays that worked out later, when they're playtesting, they let you do infinite takebacks because we're not really trying to see who's going to win this game of Magic
Yeah, it
on
doesn't matter.
skill or whatever. It's just how these decks play out. How does it feel? Which is advantage? Are those games repetitive? Right? There's all these things we're keeping an eye on that are not who wins and who's good at Magic. And so I do play faster now because I want more reps to show me
Yeah.
those things, and I'm not trying to like impress a powerful Brian Schneider who I
So
want to think I'm good at Magic.
to be fair, I knew the answer before I asked it, not because someone told me, but like you and
It
Toto
makes
Santi
sense.
were both like, we're gonna get, you're younger in your career. I probably did it too, and I, it's just something you grow out of pretty fast, and you've been doing this for a long time. So it was like, yeah, obviously, it was interesting, like at the time, but
And when I'm playtesting legendary
now you're
sets,
the elder. Yeah.
yes. Now hopefully maybe there's someone who's trying to press me. I don't know. But his legendary sets, it's often just me either simulating two hands or simulating one hand because you can play from 1 to 5.
Hmm.
And I'll go lightning fast in those. I don't need to communicate with anyone. I don't need to like think hard and like yes, I'm measuring win rates, but it's like more important to just like see all the game feel stuff. So I'll just like rip through these games again and again. And so that is certainly a contrast to the Boston slowness of my early time there.
Yeah, you can win without winning at this point, and you
Yeah.
have many times over, I feel.
And one of the heartwarming thing about some people playing Commander is they're all winning without winning, right? Like presumably the four playing Commander, they're hanging their friends, they're eating some pretzels, they're gonna have a great time no matter who wins. And in competitive play, like you don't have to win to be happy. That is the goal. And sort of part of the goal is like trying to become the best version of yourself, right? Trying
Yeah.
to master the physics of the game and like hone your craft and just like figure skaters are trying to become the best figure skater they can and trumpet players trying to become the best trumpet player they can. We were trying to become the best competitive Magic players that we could be. And so that experience is gratifying even when you lose. It's obviously more fun to win, right? It's not just I'm happy to win, I'm sad when I lose, right? But
Mhm.
we were so focused on when we're competing, not when we're developing, of like trying to find edges and win that we weren't in the same vibe of like let's all just chillax and laugh about this infinite squirrel combo. You know what I mean? Like I think that those are both valid ways to play. It's fine to be a hardcore player. I empathize with hardcore players. I was one once. I've lost my edge now. Um, it was never as sharp as most of the other people in the department that were playing the pro tours. Uh, they're all valid ways to play. But when I think about the net happiness of most players playing Commander versus competitive, like the Commander players, I'm happier that they're out there having a good time and living robust, fulfilling social lives, and not uh, honing the blade
It does
endlessly.
sound good. It sounds good. Yeah, it's like normally I ask this question, if you were the head of magic, what would you do with it? But I feel like it's wrong to ask you. Like you should live in your separate world where you're working on Riftbound and keep don't cross the streams.
I mean, I want Magic to thrive and
Yeah.
be beloved and widespread and culturally impactful and enjoyed by millions. And boy, are they crushing that goal right now. So I
Oh
would
yeah.
not want to screw anything up. It's like, you don't go back in time and change something because you're going to screw up your whole life now. It's like, I don't want to screw up anything bad at doing. They are annihilating their goals in terms of growth and number of players playing. And so it's
For
like,
sure.
keep on, keep it on. Like, if you're going to grow 80% in one year, don't let me get in your way. Keep growing 80% a year as long as you can. Or, like, keep getting a great game out to millions of happy players. Keep doing that. I don't want to mess that up.
Yeah, I want to give you credit for something. It came up on an earlier call, and I think Aaron certainly had a big role in making the game more top down and flavor forward. Brian Tinsman did too, but I think you were also like a big proponent of like making sure the cards felt fun in their fiction, in a way that's certainly translated to the things you've done afterwards. But I don't know that you get enough credit for being one of the forces who made that happen. I think it's a really big deal in Magic reaching its full potential. And so it's essentially like countering an earlier conversation I had. But I do think you were a pretty big part of that in the mid alts.
That's very heartwarming. I really appreciate you saying so. As a designer, it is really important to me and fun to me to sort of try to look for ways to evoke the flavor of a concept mechanically on the card. And as a consumer of like board games and card games, I love when games do that too. And so when I'm making legendary sets or in the old days Plants vs Zombies hero sets, saying, okay, I'm making cards for the Hulk. What's the Hulk all about? How can I make you feel like you are the Hulk when you're playing these cards is very
Yeah.
important to me. And then
Hmm.
saying, okay, what's Doctor Strange all about? How can we make you feel like you're Doctor Strange when you're playing those cards is very important to me. Um, and so I see Magic doing a lot of that in the modern era, and
Hmm.
I enjoy uh, the way they interpret flavor concepts as mechanics. And it's sort of every time they do it, they're sort of saying, "You see what I did there, right? Do you see what I'm trying to express through mechanics about the flavor?" And as a player, like, "Oh, I see what you did do there. I see. It's the shrink me potion from Alice in Wonderland, and so when you drink it, it shrinks you. I get it." Or whatever the thing is they're trying to convey. Um, this is a squirrel in Bloomburrow, so it's like hiding away acorns for winter, and you did that with mechanics. That's cool, right? Or this is a Throne of Eldraine take on the Gingerbread Man, or it's a Throne of Eldraine take on the witch that bakes you in her oven, or it's the Throne of Eldraine take on Red Riding Hood, right? It's like, oh, I see what you did there. Time Spiral has a ton of that, maybe too much. Um, Legendary and Marvel Superhero Squad and PvZ Heroes all have a ton of that. Riftbound is some of it also, and I love trying to signal things as a designer and then hoping people will notice them, and then usually somebody does. And as a player, I like noticing them also.
Oh, that sounds good. All right. I feel like, is there anything left in your brain?
We should have like a party someday with everybody from that era and hang out.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be really nice. I think some of us will go to MagicCon in Vegas, but I would like to do like a bigger thing another time too.
Yeah, I would be I could probably get talked to traveling to some kind of get together. Why not? Pair it with some sort of event that's happening somewhere. I checked and I can't go to MagicCon Vegas because
Mhm.
that's the Matilda performance that weekend and I cannot miss
Oh,
it.
yeah. My daughter yeah, I do love that your kids are in the musical, like, my kid is very big in the musical, and I think they both will be, or in, the play.
Yeah,
That's pretty wild to me, but
it's
it
basically
is
their
pretty
first
fabulous.
one. My middle daughter was in Peter Pan Junior as like an after school thing earlier, but other than that, this is the first one they've been in. And I'm impressed that they're like eager to go and sticking with it, and they don't mind like a
I
3-hour rehearsal on a Friday night. Like it's pretty good commitment.
I think that if we could do, like so we're doing The Descendants. There's a musical for The Descendants. The school is amazing at delivering these great performances, but the thing that I think would be really nice, and I could see Aaron Forsyth and many folks who've grown up parental, like, we could do, like, a very Disney-themed or, like, our karaoke session to bring out the Frozen songs that we've been, like, mastering all these years.
I would do karaoke.
I would definitely I would be there. I would do, like, Girl Dad karaoke for sure. It's been waiting to
Yeah,
come out. Yeah.
I, I don't have it in me to like organize such an event, and I have too much social anxiety to like think that a bunch of people would come to it. But if such an event occurred, I could probably be convinced to get to such some kind of get together and reunion.
Yeah.
You've
You don't
evoked a
have
lot
to
of feelings
sing.
of nostalgia through your essays and through your show.
Yeah, it's been a really surprising journey, but it's been really rewarding too. It's nice to see you all. It's funny, like, you guys, have started like, people have started showing up and, like, surprising each other, and I think you'll see more of each other after this, which I think is good because, it was a really lucky cohort of people to get to spend so much quality time with. Um,
Yeah, and it is nice that sometimes you work with folks you worked with at Wizards. Like at all my companies, there have been some people from Wizards. There
yeah.
certainly are at Riot. There certainly were at PopCap. Sometimes I will hire them into my new company because I knew their work from Wizards. Um, and so that's a great way to get reunions, or you'll see them at shows or something. Uh, I was at the um, I was at the TFT Open tournament in Paris, which was a very nice trip for them to send me on, to
Oh,
support
yeah.
Ripbound. Um, and then, Gavin Verhey was just, like, there as a fan, just, like, watching TFT and hanging out and seeing people, and he has contacts all over the world, and so he's sort of a super connector as far as people know each other. But you'll see people at, uh, PAX Unplugged or at random trade shows, um, or publishing cool stuff online, and you're sort of like aware of their orbit. And I am just like in awe of everybody's super awesome career paths, and basically everyone from that whole era is like going on to just do like such cool things and really crush it.
Yeah, certainly, a great place to build game making skills.
It taught us all a
Yeah.
lot, and we taught each other a lot. And I certainly learned a lot from you, and I'm grateful for your leadership in that era, and also just like your sort of hand to hand combat skills of developing a file with your own bare hands as well as leading teams to do it. And the sets are definitely better off given your skill at getting the cards in the right slots.
It's been so long, but it was fun.
And it has a nice legacy where like people talk about Ravnica and they talk about Mirrodin and they talk about Time Spiral and Lord and Charles of Lara. Like these things all still exist in people's consciousness. Commander means people look up all the cards from everywhere forever. They're all immortal. Um, and like if we had been making meatball subs, they probably wouldn't be remembered as much this many years later. That's a fine thing to do with your life, but it doesn't necessarily have the legacy that endures like this game
Yeah.
has. Um, and when I think of those old sets, I immediately think of all the people that worked on them if it was a time that I was there. And those are fond memories.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I hope to see you again soon. I apologize if I start singing
Frozen.
songs at you. It doesn't have to be Frozen. Encanto's there. The Descendants is there.
Encanto is my
E-
favorite Disney movie.
Encanto is wonderful. It's a great movie, and it has a great soundtrack. Moana
I,
songs. There's so many great songs.
I've seen all four Descendants movies, of course,
Oh
um,
wow. Yeah. Well.
but I don't I don't love them as much as I love the Disney Zombies movies, especially the first two.
Ah. Okay.
I don't know if you've seen those, but they're very
Mm-mm.
good, especially the first two. If you guys like Descendants, you should watch Disney Zombies and then Disney Zombies 2, and then maybe to stop there. Um, but those are very good.
Okay. I will tell the children that we will steal their brains and eat them. Uh, the G-rated version of that.
Yeah, it's the songs are great, the characters are good, and they, in a very savvy fashion, like told a story about racism and segregation without explicitly telling a story about racism and segregation. Because a lot of families wouldn't just like turn on like a movie about racism and segregation, but they will
Yeah.
turn on like a charming zombie love story, which this also is. It's just great music and dancing. But then it does bring you into a tale that is an allegory for segregation, racism, and gets you on the right side of that topic.
Okay. That I was already yes, but now I'm more yes.
The most valuable thing you have gotten out of this session is that hopefully you'll now go watch Disney Zombies with your kids and
It's
love it.
non-trivial worth.
It
Oh,
brings me joy to imagine you may go watch it.
all right. Before we cut out and eat dinner, are there people is there anyone you would like to leave a question for? So, like, people I haven't talked to yet. I will talk with Paul Sotosanti, Mark Rosewater, Aaron Forsythe, um, many people, Monty Ashley, like some pretty
Hmm.
Chris Galvin, anyone you a Worth Wolpert. There's I mean, here's one. That's terrible. I don't want to ask that, but no, I'm not going to ask it. It's too amateurish, and you're a responsible person. But yeah, no, I think you could throw any question you want in any direction. You don't have to. Like, there's so many
Yeah,
people ahead. Gutierrez is coming up.
I love Dr. Guts. He's so great. We even worked together at another company after Wizards.
Oh yeah,
He's great. Um,
man. I'm like, I just sent Scaff this email of all these people. Oh,
yeah, I don't have a question for them as much as a general outpouring of gratitude and affection for all the good times we all shared, all the work and skill they put into making the game great, and the ways we all made each other even better.
all right. I give you a big hug, and I thank you for coming on.
You too, buddy.
It's great to see you.
Let's make sure we hang out at least once every 17 years, like clockwork. We'll never miss every 17-year cycle.
We're cicadas. We're the cicadas of friends.
That's true. All
All
right,
right.
I'll see you at the reunion.
Take it easy, sir.
Thanks for having me on, Brian. Appreciate your essays and your show.
Thank you, Devin Lowe. All of your games and happiness as well.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good one.
See you, boss.